Didn't died here this morning, but congratulations to him this morning on his job as leader. Thank God for all of y'all that are here this morning. And I want to say this before we pray, dropping a little nugget every morning. Before I come here, I ask God what to say. And I want to say this to the government party, also to the Prime Minister, which is my cousin. I'm proud of him. It's been a long time coming, my brother. It's all about God. And I know you'll do well. Amen. And the Bible said that some were called and some were chosen. And I believe that no bias here now, that the Prime Minister is chosen for such a time as this. And it's all about God. And he said, all you know the way, teach the young people. And some of y'all are here, you're old, teach these young ones what just come in. Some of them had what they want to be hard, but teach them. No, wait till your time. Wait till your name call. Amen? Oh, look at y'all going quiet. Let's read this scripture here. It says from, except the Lord build a house. Psalms 127. Except the Lord build a house, they that labor in vain that build it. Except the Lord keep the city. Listen here now. The watchman wake it, but in vain. Except God build it. It's all about God. Amen. And now before I pray, I want to say this to the Prime Minister before I forget. My son told me to tell you hello. And he said, you must call him Reverend Dr. Derico Clare. He's only 11. He's watching now. And he's so proud of you. Amen. Let us pray. Bow your heads on your chest. If you ain't got no chest, bow it on your chin, bow it on something. Amen. Oh, gracious Heavenly Father, God, we thank you for this day. The last day, God, in this mount. God, you've been good to us better than we've been to ourselves. God, and we just thank you, God, for what you're about to do in the midst of us, Lord. God, we ask you, God, to bless the Prime Minister, God, in a very special way. The Deputy Leader, the Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition, everybody that hear, God, that called by your name, God. God, we ask you, God, to direct us in the right way, God, that we may go, God. And God, we thank you. We give you the praise. We bless this house today. We decree miracle, great things is about to happen. In the name of the Father, in the name of the Son, in the name of the Holy Ghost. Now, children, thou hast taught us to say,
Our Father, who art in heaven,
hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those that trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory. May the peace of God be with you that passes all understanding.
Amen.
Philip Davis, Chester Cooper, Frederick Mitchell, Glennis Hannah Martin, Obadiah Lipscomb, Alfred Sass, Dr. Michael Garber, Clay Sweden, Keith Bell, Wayne Monroe, Vaughn Miller, Jobette Colby Davis, Ginger Moxley, Mario Bolag, Jomo Campbell, Basil Massicott, Miles LaRoda, Pia Grover Rowe, Lisa Rami, Zane Lightfoot, Dr. Hubert Minnis, Jamal Strawn, John Tinder, Bassett Rose, Leon Lundy, Kurt Cornish, Wade Watson, Leonardo Lightburn, Leslie Miller Bryce, Leroy Major, Sylvanus Petty, Michael Bonby, Michael Princard, James Quincy Thompson, Aaron Lewis, Shannon Von Cartwright, Adrian Gibson, Adrian White.
Thank you. Members, I'd like to acknowledge our guests today. We have the members of the Zonta Club who was here visiting with us. And we have turned the house orange today as we support them in violence against women and girls. We say thank you to you for joining us today, and we give you our full support. I would like to read something that they would have shared with us. Take 2 minutes to read that. And it's from the Department of Gender and Family Affairs, and it's called Who Are We? The Department of Gender and Family Affairs was established in October 2016. It has expanded on the work of the Bureau of Women's Affairs, which was first established in June 1991 as a women's desk under the Ministry of Youth, Sports, and Community Development. The desk was renamed the Women's Unit in September of 1987 and was again renamed the Bureau of Women's Affairs in January of 1995. The department is responsible for the promotion of gender equality and empowerment of women and men throughout the archipelago of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. The department is also responsible for mainstreaming gender into all government policies, programs, and projects. What we do, we promote the economic, political, social, and psychological empowerment of women and men, coordinate all national women's activities at local and international levels, disseminate information on all aspects of development affecting women in order to increase the level of national awareness, develop strategies for dealing with issues that negatively affect the lives of women and men in the Family Islands, compile information on women for reports, questionnaires, presentations, and for publications nationally, regionally, and internationally. Monitor, evaluate, and report on the implementation of regional and international conventions adopted by the government that impact women and men. Develop increased linkage with non-governmental organizations and private sector agencies to promote the advancement of women and men. Promote global initiatives that promote gender equality and empowerment, for example, the Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you very much for your participation here with us today as we partner with you against violence. As it relates to
Yeah, but it's recognized that the officer.
Yes. Before we move on, Minister, just oblige me 2 minutes to congratulate the new leader of the official opposition. Honorable Member for Marco City. I extend congratulations to you on behalf of myself and the whole entire staff here at the House of Assembly, and I look forward to good things from you as I ask you to extend your hand and mainstream and partner with the government as we move the Commonwealth of the Bahamas forward. Thank you. God bless you on your new assignment. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Angliston.
I wanted to join the voices with what you have just shared with the Parliament and the nation to extend or to communicate our support of the work of Zonta. More than support, our gratitude. Zonta has a long history of working with girls and women and have empowered many, many women throughout this nation and girls with incredible outcomes. And they've seen it over and over, even during this last season. The many young people, young women, who have been able to say that the work of Zonta has been so important in engendering a spirit of progress in their lives. And I'm very happy that they have sought to bring what they're doing here to the Parliament, because we as lawmakers and policymakers, we are here, in my imagination, for the purposes of shaping a new reality for our people. I always speak about our history, Madam Speaker, which is one that on these shores has been very challenging, difficult, painful, and the purpose of progress, and in particular post-1967, has been one in which we seek to create a social paradigm, social and economic paradigm that is equitable, that brings social justice, and that provides opportunity for our children to become of their own in the most powerful way. And so we get involved in the political divide. It's very strident on occasion, but it should never go or permeate to the fabric of the obligation that we have as elected officials, as lawmakers and policymakers, to commit our lives, our spirits, our energies, our resources to creating a new reality for our people. And so the work of Zonta, particularly during this period, is one in which we are being compelled to look with honest eyes at the condition of our people, particularly as it relates to women. And the statistics are clear. We have one of the highest rates of violence against women in the region, and I'm told in the world. This is a problem. This is a problem. And so in this particular period, we are bringing a focus to this issue, because when those of us who are parents, when we have girls, when we have daughters, nobody wants their daughter to be the subject of violence or any sort of assault or assailing circumstance, or in a circumstance in which that child is prohibited from reaching her full potential. We feel the same way about our boys, but the statistics are showing something about our women and our girls. And so we have to have honest eyes about it. And the men have to be the strongest advocates. Yes. You know, someone said to me the other day, why are we asking the women about marital rape? What do the men think about it? Let go on the record so the country can know. So the country can know. So this is a serious, somber, sober period. Because even in recent times, we've seen some situations which break our hearts and embarrass and shame us, because we all one. We are one. And so when one of us is harmed or one of us harms, we are all affected, and we're all responsible to respond in some way to bring about a rehabilitation, a restoration of our people. Otherwise, we shouldn't be in here. And so I want to thank Zonta for the work that they're doing, to pledge our full support. And we got to have the courage. You see, there's some politics around some issues, and we don't want to tackle it because, we tiptoe around it. But we can't tiptoe around social issues which are causing such terrible pain. Such pain in our country. We got to eradicate pain. That's why we're here. So I commend Zonta for the work that they do, and the Ministry of Social Services and the Department of Gender Affairs for their work. And I know the minister, the member for West Grand Bahama and Bimini, and his Minister of State, the member for Marathon, will bring the leadership to this in partnership with civil society to ensure that we tackle this issue. We have lots of issues to tackle. We got to deal with poverty. We got to deal with disease, all kinds of things, education. But in this particular season, we are dealing with this issue of violence. We got to stop this violence. And so I congratulate all of the stakeholders and pledge our full, unqualified support for the work that you do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Marco City.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I wanted to lend my voice to congratulating Zonta, the Department of Social Services, for the work that they're doing with respect to addressing violence in general, of course, sexual violence in particular. Madam Speaker, the reason this is very significant for me is growing up as a child, we grew up at a time where we were aware of acts of violence being carried out against women and girls. And as a society, we unfortunately were quite tolerant of it. In fact, we transferred persons who were the victimizers, the predators, from department to department, whether they worked in the school system or they worked in some private organization that had carriage of young people's lives. While it was not confined to women or girls, boys were affected as well. Disproportionately, girls and women have been affected. And we have found, even though men, we often talk about, listen, let's be balanced in our speech, disproportionately men have been the predators, have been those persons responsible for acts of violence. At 19, I had really the unfortunate honor of speaking at one of the largest rallies ever held in the Commonwealth at that time. I believe it could have been close to 10,000 persons on Sudden Recreation Ground. And we were calling for stiffer penalties for rape offenders as a 19-year-old student representing the College of the Bahamas. And while we've made some progress in legislation, we're not nearly there yet, because what we have not been able to fundamentally change is the way in which men and women negotiate relationships in the Bahamas. And even acts of sexual violence are really not about sex. Many times it's about power relations. And so there are some underlying issues in the Bahamian society we have to address in terms of how our boys see our girls and ultimately see our women when they become men. And so I agree with the member from Angleton that the advocates to end violence against women and girls have to largely be men. So that means that if we're in the bar, the kinds of jokes that we tolerate, the kinds of conversations we participate in, even in jest, the kinds of conversation we participate in right here in the House of Assembly, all of these things reflect a mindset, and we ought to be cautious on how we manage our discussions as it relates to violence against women and men. On the marital rape subject, I'm glad that the member for Cat Island, Ron Kingston, Salvador, has undertaken to bring that issue front and center in the Parliament, because it is a long overdue discussion that must end in something concrete that the society can measure. This idea that there can be no such thing as marital rape because two persons share a piece of paper or even an emotional bond that resulted in a marriage certificate, I mean, is absolutely ludicrous. The truth is, if a woman knows that her husband is extremely promiscuous, they still live together, she has good reason to believe that her life is at risk based on some sexual choices that he has made, she reserves the right to refuse submitting her body that could be exposed to something that could be deadly to her. She reserves that right. My daughter reserves that right. My sisters reserve that right. And so if it's good for them, it is absolutely good for everybody else. Similarly, there are many relationships that are not functioning. I mean, the paper still exists. Sometimes they're in the same house, but many times they're estranged. They haven't been with each other for weeks, for months, maybe for years. The paper itself cannot give a man the view that he is entitled to intimacy when he may have forfeited that intimacy by making certain ill-advised decisions and then expect to come and enjoy it. So I wish to say to all of those that are in this fight that I certainly stand with them in terms of us being able to address this issue that is creating carnage in our homes. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Marathon.
Good morning, Madam Speaker and my colleagues. First of all, I would like to join in with the Member of Parliament for Angleton and the Member of Parliament from Marcos City in welcoming those who are part in the fight against violence against women. But of course, I cannot proceed without welcoming particularly Dr. Philippe, who's here. She's the Director for Gender and Family Affairs in the Ministry of Social Services and Urban Development. Thank you so much for being here. I would also like to thank, everybody know Miss Marissa Mason-Smith, the Zonta president for so long. She has been in this great fight for women. I thank you. I salute you. We have Mrs. Janet McKenzie, who's here as well. Ms. Janet McKenzie is also part of the NGOs. Downstairs, we have Mrs. Lines, Robin Lines. We also have Cleopatra Christie. She's also a part of this. Many of them from the social society is here. And so I would like to say I'm very thankful and grateful to see the great participation. And as you can see, everything is orange. Orange is our theme for the fight against violence against women. And I would like to say, I would want all of us present to go into a moment of silence for at least 5 seconds for Bella, baby Bella, who has lost her life to violence, and also Mrs. Petra Curry. She has not lost her life, but she's fighting for her life. And so I want us to go into a moment of silence, even for those who are not saying that they are being abused, even those who are silent. Let us go silent for a moment. Thank you so much. The international campaign of 16 days of activism to end violence against women, of course, is observed from the 25th of November, which is the International Day to End Violence Against Women. The date for the campaigns were chosen to link violence against women and human rights and emphasize that gender-based violence against women is a violation of human rights. And our international theme for the campaign is Orange the World, End Violence Now. My ministry, through the Department of Gender and Family Affairs, is pleased to partner with the Zonta Clubs, CWIL, and all the NGOs during this time. This campaign is being celebrated in more than 200 countries all over the world. And as I said again, orange is the color being used, and why we need to collectively end all forms of physical, psychological, economic, and cyber violence against women and each other. Many perpetrators of violence may not see their violent behavior as a crime. They rather perceive it as normal, blame the victim for provoking their violence and abusive behavior, and avoid taking responsibility. And I end by saying, not only would the Department of Social Services and Urban Development would seek to find relief to those who are abused, but also seek to find a remedy for the abuser. Other than just going to prison and paying for your costs, they must be properly rehabilitated to come back in society. If we refuse to even think of helping them, just know that they're gonna come back and there is a chance that there would be a repeat of their offense. I thank you so much, and I ask all of you to champion with us in our 16 days of activism, be a part of our events, and encourage those that you know to be a part. Thank you so much.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for St. Anne's.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. This is, I will say, a new day. I'm very pleased. This is a new day, Madam Speaker. This day in particular. When I arrived on the steps of Parliament, the House this morning, I was astonished to see the number of representatives from domestic violence organizations like Zonta, like the Road to Peace offshoot of the Rotary Club of East Nassau, the members of Parliament that were participating with them in conversation exemplified the significance that the actions of this House will have for the country if we work together and pass the legislation that will be required to not only protect women and children in domestic violence situations, but will also provide an opportunity for the men to play a participating and lead role in that initiative. Madam Speaker, when we were last in the House, I had the opportunity to present white ribbons for each member of Parliament. I know that they've received them now. They also were given them on their arrival to the House today. That was part of the White Ribbon Campaign, which began in 1989 in Canada. In 1987, there was a massacre, Madam Speaker, in one of the universities there where 13 female students lost their lives through an act of violence perpetrated by a male. And one female member of the university staff also lost her life. So in total, 14 women lost their lives. 2 years after that, in 1989, a group of men came together and recognized that men have to be involved in the actions to end domestic violence against women and children. The White Ribbon Campaign, Madam Speaker, has an oath that they ask all men to take, be familiar with, and wherever they can, share it with those men around them to influence them to participate as well. And that oath is, I will stand up, I will speak out and act to end male violence against women and children. And Madam Speaker, for each man wearing a white ribbon today, for each woman wearing a white ribbon today, that is what the white ribbon represents. That from this day forward, we are aware, we will speak out, and we will do our best to act to end male violence against women and children. Madam Speaker, I'm privileged to wear these white ribbons with each of my colleagues today in the House, and I hope that as we go forward, we'll share this information with our families. Last Wednesday, Madam Speaker, there was a march that went from Fort Charlotte down to Rawson Square. It was a peaceful march. We walked along. Well, I participated with some other members of Parliament and Senate, along with the Zonta organization, Rise Bahamas, Women United, another organization that was there, the Girl Guides was represented, as well as the Road to Peace, a Rotary organization in the Commonwealth of Bahamas, focused on peace and conflict resolution. And it got great coverage. It ended, I think, around 11 o'clock. But through it, I learned about Women United. And I don't think many of us know what the Women United group is about. But they told stories during our time in Rawson Square of during the height of the lockdown, a woman would make a call, say that they're in a terrible situation and they need assistance. And women that are part of the Women United organization would go out and they would do their best to get to that person's home, to provide them with some protection, to provide them in an instance when there was a child that they needed to have someone else care for a few hours just so that they could get a better grip of the situation that they were under. Those women under the Women United organization were making that effort and providing that relief and protection. Madam Speaker, I am leader of the opposition's business in the House of Assembly, and my colleague, Minister Wilscombe, is the leader of government's business in the House. He is also the Minister for Social Services, and he has given credit during this administration to Prime Minister Davis for putting him in that portfolio, a portfolio that he may not have expected he would have embraced and found as fulfilling as he's found it. But I know that while he is Minister of Social Services, Madam Speaker, there will be great changes in the country. And I hope that the attention of the Minister for Social Services will focus on the 7 points that the Women United and domestic violence organizations are looking for to see from the legislators, the members of Parliament in the House of Assembly and the members of the Senate, that we pass legislation during this term, that we act in a way that will meet those 7 points. And I'm going to close now, Madam Speaker, by putting those 7 points on the Hansard record in the House of Assembly. The first is for legislation to be passed to define the worst of the worst, to include instances where children lose their lives as a result of domestic violence. That should be in law defined as the worst of the worst, so that those perpetrators that carry out those crimes receive the death penalty. The second point is that they're asking a court be dedicated, and I know that the government has already indicated that that is the direction they are going in, and I hope that we do that post haste quite quickly. The third has also been recognized by the Minister of Social Services with the creation and construction of shelters for victims of domestic violence. The fourth is a public sexual offenders register. The fifth is public counseling services for victims of domestic violence, whether it's the women or the children, and we all recognize the men. And the sixth is that there are child care centers. These would assist women that have responsibilities, whether they take them on voluntarily or that is the last resort to provide for their children. They do, however, need breaks from time to time, and it's not always a husband, a child's father, a parent, grandparent that can take the child. That might assist in easing the burden, Madam Speaker. And then finally, the gender-based violence bill. I believe it was drafted in 2016. It didn't come through the previous PLP administration, didn't come through the last FN administration. I'll close as I started. This is a new day, Madam Speaker. Let's get it done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It will be remiss of me if I were not to stand to indicate our government's willingness to embrace those 7 points that the NGOs and the other advocates for the end to gender violence, particularly against women, that we will move to address those. And in this new day, new things will happen. I found it rather curious that as a part of the awareness that is given out by tokens, included tokens was a whistle.
Yes.
I'll say no more about that.
Yes.
I'll say no more about that. But suffice it to say, I did meet with representatives of the Road to Peace last Friday. I had a wonderful discussion and engagement on first of all, the origin of the white ribbon and the fact that more has to happen insofar as the voice of men are concerned in speaking to and about gender violence. I think we have to accept that there's some cultural issues that attend to this, that's deep-rooted, that might require a whole resetting of the mindset and attitudes of men and women. Because if they don't speak up, we will not know. And very often they don't. They're content to just live in the circumstance they find themselves when they don't necessarily have to. I know about it I recall being on the bench as a magistrate and women, children reporting their fathers to the police, and the wife or the girlfriend chastising and punishing the child for doing so. There's some embarrassment attendant to these facts, but we have to rise above that. And we have to find ways and means to encourage men to speak out, women to speak out, and that is the one way we'll get it done. And it's in all forms. While standing here, I could recall, again, I go back to some of my experiences on the bench. A gentleman who was charged with sexual assault on his daughter. And there's a term, I don't know whether we all are old enough to appreciate or remember it, they call it checking. Those of us who grew up on the family islands might appreciate it. Checking, where the father used to check the daughters to see whether they are active or not. And they found that as acceptable. The mothers found it as acceptable too. And in fact, and that was a cultural practice. And this gentleman he was living in East Grand Bahamas on the bench in Freeport. And he was saying he was just checking his daughter because she went to school and never came home till 8 o'clock that night. She wanted to know what she was doing. But that's the kind of attitude that we have to, that's the kind of the glass ceiling that still has to be broken in the society today. Because I could tell you, you hear the stories, but we are still keeping it buried, still in the closet. Time to come out of the closet. And for it to be out of the closet, men have to lead and speak to it, speak about it. And let us not accept what has been the cultural norms, and let us get away from it. This is a new day. And violence in any shape and form, particularly against our darlings, cannot be tolerated and is unacceptable. And so I'm happy to join in the voices that decry this practice and despicable act. And I want all to know that I'm firmly behind and support the efforts of those who speak out against violence, particularly domestic violence, against our children and our women. So again, congratulations to the Zonta Club. I mean, I couldn't go home unless I said something. I left home this morning being reminded of that today is, gender violence, an end of it. And let's hopefully, from the day on, more men will be speaking about it. More men will be shaming other men for their acts and conduct. And yes, Marco City, we have to be careful with our language. We become so used, just as, as some words have now been deemed to be unacceptable, which we found acceptable. You have to understand that some words are just not acceptable anymore, even in jest, even in telling our jokes. We need to be careful in our language because words do convey meanings that sometimes are unintended, but it does have the unintended consequence that could lead to violence. And so with that, congratulations, and let us join our voices to those that support the move against domestic violence.
Thank you, honorable members. I'd like to have a document laid on the table. It is a report from the Auditor General, and it reads, Report of the Auditor General for the year ending June 30th, 2019. Order that the document do lie on the table. We'll now go to the order of business. Introduction and swearing in of new members. Laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Tall Pines.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I beg leave to lay on the table of this House the following: the Quarantine SARS-CoV-2 Order 2021.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for West Grand Bahama and Bimini.
Madam Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following: the Industries Encouragement Approved Product, the Bread Bar Company Limited, Order 2021, the Price Control General Amendment Number 8, Regulations 2021.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the documents do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers. Statements and communications by ministers. Communications by the clerk. Messages from the Senate. Is this a message? The Honorable Senate acquaints the Honorable House of Assembly that they have agreed to the following resolution, accompanying message number 1 from the Honorable House of Assembly dated 4th of November 2021. Resolved that a humble address be presented to His Excellency the Governor General, thanking him for his most gracious speech at the opening of Parliament. Order that the document do lie on the table. Motions for leave of absence, leave to resign seat and new writs. Presentations of petitions. Presentations of reports of committees. Adoption of reports of committees. First reading of bills. Second reading and committal of bills. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Cat Island, Rum Key, and San Salvador.
Madam Speaker, I rise second reading of the following bills that relates to the supplementary budget. Which we propose to deal with as a compendium as it relates to the supplementary budget of expenditures and revenues that were laid when I last spoke in this House. So I move, firstly, for a bill for an act for the appropriation of further diverse sums of money for and towards deferring the expenses of the government of the Colony of the Bahamas during the fiscal year commencing 1st of July 2021 and ending on the 30th of June 2022. It is also proposed as the compendium a bill. And I will, in my contribution, Madam Speaker, speak to the bill for the capital expenditures and to a bill for the act to amend the Value Added Tax Act. Madam Speaker, I stand to open the debate on the supplementary budget for the year 2021-2022. It lays, Madam Speaker, the foundation for the launch of a new vision and a new direction for our beloved country. In life, the way in which you begin usually determines the way in which you will finish. When building a home, great attention must be paid to ensuring a sturdy foundation is laid to ensure that the home does not collapse when strong winds blow. It must be able to sustain headwinds. In education, a strong foundation in the basics, especially in literacy and numeracy, is necessary in the early years to ensure success later in high school or university. In governance, it is important to establish a strong foundation from day one to ensure successful completion of the government's mandate in later years. Madam Speaker, I am confident that in this supplementary budget, the first budget of my administration, we are starting off on the right foot by laying the strong foundation the country needs to guide us over the next 5 years. This budget begins to address the immediate need to get the economy up and running again and sets the groundwork for a plan for fiscal recovery and economic growth that the country so badly needs. This is no small feat. Even though the country has breathed a collective sigh of relief since the change of government on September 17th, we are not out of the shadows yet of the many crises which we inherited. The health crisis, during which hundreds of Bahamians have died, many more have been hospitalized, and thousands more have suffered from infection. The economic crisis, which was exacerbated by the health crisis, during which many Bahamians lost steady employment and fell out of the middle class. The post-Dorian crisis, in which time seemed to stand still for the victims, who saw little or no progress made on their behalf over a period of 2 years. And the crisis of governance, during which incompetence, a lack of transparency, and a lack of compassion were the hallmarks of the day. The challenge before us as a country is to address these multiple crises while at the same time digging ourselves out of the very deep fiscal hole. And so, this budget seeks to stabilize our country's finances while also providing some relief for the Bahamian people. The already poor state of the economy at the beginning of the pandemic, coupled with the blunt force use of lockdowns by the previous administration, made an already bad situation much, much worse. With this new plan and vision, Madam Speaker, to restore our country, this supplementary budget is designed to achieve 3 major goals. It provides much needed relief to the Bahamian people. It reallocates funding to match the ministerial portfolios of the government. And it provides funding for critical expenditures which were neglected by the previous administration. It is also important to point out that we are accomplishing these objectives while not adding a single additional dollar to the national debt that was forecast in the original budget table in May. In fact, this supplementary budget begins the process of reducing the extraordinary levels of borrowing seen under the former administration by reducing the government's projected deficit for the fiscal year. I want to repeat that. We intend to take care of people and reduce the deficit at the same time. This balanced approach of meeting the needs of the Bahamian people while practicing fiscal discipline reflects the competent and compassionate approach we are bringing to governing during these very difficult times. Our supplementary budget recognizes there is an urgent need for change in this country that cannot wait for the next fiscal cycle. The people have called for a change in vision and a change in priorities. They have called for a compassionate, respectful, and focused government. With this budget, we are establishing the solid foundation that will allow us to roll out our transformational agenda and set the course for a new direction for our nation. It is a new day. Madam Speaker, Over my career in politics, I've earned many titles: Leader of the Opposition, Minister, and now Prime Minister. But the one that I hold most dear to me is Member of Parliament. So to the people of Cat Island, Rumkey and San Salvador, who have placed their trust in me as their representative in this honorable house, I wish to express my warmest gratitude. I will always remain connected to and informed by their realities on the ground. It is in fact because of my conversations with my constituents, hearing about their hopes and dreams, as well as their struggles and challenges, that I am able to confidently speak on their behalf. My words and my priorities are grounded in their experiences and perspectives. Under my watch, development will truly be national in scale. This is as true for New Providence as it is for Grand Bahama and Abaco. It is equally true for the islands of Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador. Real national development ensures that the challenges in every inhabited island of the Bahamas and the issues in all communities are incorporated into a strategic development plan. My people, my constituents, thank you for this opportunity to represent and serve you once again. Before I go further, I wish to congratulate the member for Marco City on obtaining his party support to represent them as the new leader of the Free National Movement and the leader of the official opposition, another Cat Islander. As a senior member of the previous administration's cabinet, entrusted with a number of portfolios, I'm sure you would have benefited from the wisdom, counsel, and guidance of your former leader, the member for Kalani, with whom you shared such a close and loyal bond. It must be very reassuring for him that the member of Kalani, for you, has chosen to remain in this honorable house, ever watchful and close at hand to help you defend the track record of the previous administration. Of course, you serve as senator. I guess you were selected by the member for Kalani as well to serve as senator. And you no doubt will benefit from the experience for having served there as well. I noticed that you mentioned that you had Kalani on speed dial. So Bahamians have been advised, some might say warned, that you'll be in touch regularly. I wish you well. I wish you well in your endeavors. Madam Speaker, in today's world, with increased cross-border trade, with increasing impacts of global warming, our small country faces substantial risks and challenges. Our islands have never fully recovered from the destruction wrought, and I go back as far as Hurricanes Joaquin, Matthew, and Irma. While recovering from its disaster, we were faced with the unprecedented levels of damage from Hurricane Dorian to islands in the north. And then, of course, came a new virus and the COVID-19 pandemic. It is expected that there would be hardships after weathering storms of this magnitude. But the damage done was intensified and prolonged by the incompetent and lackluster response of the previous administration. They not only failed the people of Abaco, Grand Bahama, Long Island, Atlas, Ragged Island during and after the storms, they failed the entire nation with their bungled ad hoc policies, their lack of transparency, unwillingness to respond to inquiries and questions, and failure to accurately present the state of the nation's finances to the Bahamian people, reflected a double dose of arrogance and incompetence that retarded growth and set our nation back many years. We are still trying to determine the detail and extent of what it is they were so keen to hide. We saw firsthand their unwillingness to comply with the conditions of the IMF's loan facility to reveal who exactly they gave the borrowed funds to. Why was it so important to keep the facts from the Bahamian people? We have seen over the past 4.5 years how they mishandled the BPL rate reduction bond to the point that it is no longer a feasible financing strategy or cost reduction measure for the Bahamian people. We have seen the unsustainable borrowings of foreign currency over the past 3 years. In the most recent fiscal year, foreign currency loans made up 64%, almost 2/3 of government borrowings. Meanwhile, domestic financial institutions who have the capacity to support government debt issuances were underutilized. Why burden the Bahamian people with such expensive borrowings? Their approach to debt management and fiscal management was reckless and threatened to harm the long-term prospects of this nation. We are still awaiting the results of a financial report giving a detailed account of the government's current fiscal position. This review, which is being conducted by a top accounting firm, is almost complete. It will help us to clear up any discrepancies and gain a true understanding of where we are in terms of unpaid, unbudgeted, and contingent liabilities of the government. Madam Speaker, in 2020, the Bahamas experienced a significant shrinkage of real GDP. In fact, it is estimated that the real GDP, or output, contracted by 14.5%. This contraction occurred at the same time as the previous administration's historic levels of borrowing, which took the nation to a never-before-seen debt-to-GDP ratio of over 100%. The erosion of our economic and fiscal health eventually culminated in Moody's most recent downgrade in September of our sovereign credit rating from Ba2 to Ba3. Similarly, on November 12th, 2021, the rating agency Standard & Poor's also issued a downgrade of our sovereign credit rating from BB- to B+. In its statement, the rationale for the downgrade was owed to the fact that, and I quote, the debt burden has climbed almost $2.4 billion in the past 2 fiscal years, and interest costs now represent about 21% of budgetary expenses. Furthermore, the Bahamas is exposed to financing risks as it seeks to fund large deficits and refinance existing debt. Close quotes. Exceptional levels of borrowing, high and unsustainable deficit levels, and no plan to rectify this crisis. This is the economy that we have inherited. What makes the situation truly infuriating is that we still struggle to see what happened to all this expensive borrowed money. There certainly is not a single major road, school, or hospital to show for it. Where did all the billions of dollars go? We are determined to find out. And when we do, we'll certainly let the Bahamian people know. However, thankfully, a new day is here. So, Madam Speaker, let us look forward. New COVID-19 cases are down. COVID-19 hospitalizations have declined. Our U.S. travel advisory has improved from a level of 4 to a level of 3. And economic projections indicate our economy is on the way up. All of this, yet, with reports of a new, possibly more transmissible COVID variant, we are far from complacent. Everyone is tired of COVID, but unfortunately, both governments and families need to remain vigilant and engage in this battle against the virus. Yes. There's no single perfect protection against COVID, so we should all take multiple steps to protect ourselves. And remember that when we are careful, we are also protecting our friends, our families, our co-workers, and our communities. Let's hold our gatherings outside instead of inside whenever possible, because the virus is airborne and can linger in the air for hours in poorly ventilated indoor rooms. If you have to be in a crowded indoor space, wear 2 masks or a medical grade mask. I urge everyone to listen to doctors and medical experts from around the world and get vaccinated. Yes. I'm very pleased to announce that for the first time during this pandemic, our country now has enough vaccines for all Bahamians who choose to take advantage of this life-saving inoculation. This is an enormous relief. The scientific community around the world is at work studying the new variant I just talked about. It is named Omicron, and we will be sharing updates with the Bahamians as we learn more about this virus. This new variant was first identified in Botswana and South Africa, and the world owes to scientists and public health officials there a debt of gratitude for moving so quickly to share their data. Because of their transparency and their early warning, governments can act now, even with incomplete information. Thus, along with many other countries, we have imposed temporary restrictions on travelers from multiple African countries. Individuals who are not ordinarily resident in the Bahamas, who have traveled to, through, or from those countries in the last 14 days will not be allowed entry into the Bahamas at this time. Citizens and permanent residents who have traveled to these countries may be permitted entry, but will be required to quarantine for 14 days. This is not perfect protection. The variant has been identified in several other countries as well. The idea is to buy some time until we have more clarity. We just don't have enough clinical data to know with confidence yet how transmissible the new variant is or whether it induces more severe disease. We have to stay alert, stay flexible, and continue to combat the Delta strain, which is still circulating and remains a threat. Madam Speaker, despite these difficult times, there are reasons to be optimistic. Real GDP is expected to return to positive growth this year to 2%. And it is expected to peak to 8% in 2022. To keep the nation headed in a positive direction, to take advantage of the rebounding of the Bahamian economy, we must take immediate action to foster and sustain stronger economic growth. Madam Speaker, there's no denying we face difficult times. It is not breaking news to anyone that our country is in the need of a turnaround. But I did not become Prime Minister because I thought the job would be easy. And it is precisely because of the immense difficulty before us that I put together a team of leaders and innovators ready to deliver for the Bahamian people from day one. In 10 weeks, we have achieved significant progress by assembling a first-rate cabinet, constituting critical ministries to aid in our recovery, appointing board members and senators, and filling key positions with skilled, experienced Bahamians who will prove valuable in the fulfillment of our agenda. You will note that we have filled many of our key roles with professionals who represent the best in our country, including putting many young people and Bahamian women in leadership roles at various agencies. I'm extremely proud that many key positions are now held by those who are the youngest ever appointed to some of these roles. When we said we believe in young Bahamians, we meant it. We know they will bring new energy and a strong commitment to building a better Bahamas to the work ahead. It is indeed a new day. Madam Speaker, we haven't been in office that long, but we have started to have an impact already. There was a time when the members opposite said, remember? They said that free testing was impossible in the Bahamas. That's what they said. They said it, and I quote, "The PLP lives in the Alice in Wonderland of fantasies." That's what they said. Yet, within weeks of the election, under the leadership of Dr. Michael Darwin, now that's the real doctor. The Ministry of Health has rolled out a pilot program for free testing that is currently being expanded throughout the Bahamas. What the side opposite said was fantasy, we are making a reality. Yes, sir. The pilot program has been in Inagua, Bimini, the Berry Islands, and Northern Lutra. The Minister of Health and his team are finalizing the plan for nationwide free testing. That is the power of a people-oriented and solutions-focused government. We don't allow the enormity of a problem to define our willingness to solve it. Now, Bahamians are better protected as a result of these efforts. The data collected is greatly aiding our public health officials as they identify and contain outbreaks. We have reopened and expanded the hours of businesses that were unjustifiably closed for some 21 months, getting people back to work and allowing these small business owners to take care of their families again. Yes. The recreational watercraft industry recently joined the list of Bahamian businesses that have reopened. After 21 months, our straw market is open. Yes. And when I visited there last week, I saw for myself the expressions of joy and relief on the faces of vendors. It was a joy for me to see. On November 13th, we ended the emergency orders and the national curfew, which were replaced by a comprehensive public health legislation rules. No more will decisions be made by a competent authority of one. If we need to adjust our health protocols, we'll do so based on the science and the data and after consultation. Our decision-making will be rational and transparent. And when changes are needed to be made, it will be done so here in Parliament, where they can be explained and debated. Yeah. Whenever the laws seem to be enforced unfairly, wherever the laws seem to be enforced unfairly, we will make adjustments to ensure that all Bahamians are playing by the same rules, because we believe in fairness, not favoritism. In other words, it is a new day. Yes. Madam Speaker, we said that the Bahamas will play a leading role in the global discussion on climate change. Given the terrible consequences that we have already experienced, during my address to the UN and then later at COP26, the nation took its first steps towards playing a more active role in speaking to the urgency of corrective action on climate change. We intend to fully participate in the crafting of policies to save the world from the brink of a climate-generated disaster. As you can see, we have been busy, but we are just getting started. Mr. Speaker, campaigns are intense, 24/7 endeavors. I remember well that the previous government took a very long vacation at the start of their term in 2017. We did not. However, we had no choice. There was no time for us to delay in aligning the government's budget with our vision for national development and the big changes the Bahamian people voted for. We are at a critical juncture. None of the important choices we face are easy ones. As with all difficult choices, there's always a trade-off. No matter which choice is made, we do not live in an ideal world, and there are no perfect choices. Our priority was focusing on the health crisis while restoring the fiscal health of the nation, while responding as well to the needs of the people. This required the government to strike a balance between the necessary fiscal reforms and bringing immediate relief to the most vulnerable. In the most recent IMF technical report, the scenarios recommended for consideration included this one: raising the overall VAT rate to 15%, while keeping the existing VAT exemptions and leaving in place the scenario where the government was paying VAT for wealthy foreign companies. I want the Bahamian people to hear me very clearly. When we came to office, the analysis performed by the IMF indicated that if the government didn't change its VAT structure, VAT would have to be raised to 15%. Imagine that. Now, I know you all remember that the member for Kalani told the Bahamian people, you're right, Engliston, member for Kalani told the Bahamian people that he went to election 8 months early because the country faced headwinds and tough decisions. We said at the time that he wanted Bahamians to vote before he raised their taxes. And this major tax increase appears to be what he had in mind. Raising back to 15% would have turned headwinds into a hurricane. Raising back to 15% would have been just a tough decision. Right? It wouldn't have just been a tough decision. It would have been a terrible decision that would have plunged our economy into a downward spiral past the point of no return.
Yeah.
Certainly, that's your view.
Point of order? Point of order, okay.
Madam Speaker.
Stop my clock.
Madam Speaker, the member said.
Honourable member, are you on a point of order?
Yes, Madam.
Okay.
The member said that we had intentions of raising VAT. I want to say categorically there was no consideration at all on the FNM's agenda of raising any VAT.
Well, first of all, Madam Speaker, what I said is that the IMF told them that they need to do something with the VAT regime, and they would need to raise taxes to 15%. Now, they never told us that during the course of the campaign. But, there are a lot of flies on walls. And they are very busy, and they fly around a lot. Sometimes they land on the wrong wall. And guess what? Flies could talk too. So what I'm saying, what I said, Mr. Speaker, is that he talked about tough decisions having to be made after the elections. And I'm saying is that we kept telling the Bahamian people that they intended, we said it was our belief. No, listen to me. I am saying it was our belief that they were going to raise tax. I am now pointing out that there's a basis for that belief. And the basis of that belief was the IMF recommending to them to raise it to 15%. Now, what they intend to do or not is another matter, because the Bahamian people took care of that. That intention was taken care of by the Bahamian people. What we point out that is what was being recommended, right? And yeah. But you spoke about headwinds, and you talk about tough decisions. And I'm saying, if you thought about headwinds in respect to 15% increase, that ain't no headwind. That would have been a hurricane. That would have been a hurricane. And talking about tough decision, that would not have been a tough decision. That would have been a terrible decision. That would have plunged our economy in a downward spiral, and I say to a point perhaps of no return. So I just talking about your headwinds, which is hurricane. Talk about your tough decision, which would have been a terrible decision. So that's all I'm talking about. So thankfully, the Bahamian people took care of that for us. Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, we decided to take another approach, a more progressive and productive path, and broaden the tax base, which includes streamlining the tax code for efficiency and easier enforcement. Broadening the tax base also means that we now have the room to lower the VAT rate to 10%, a reduction that many Bahamians were eagerly awaiting. Once again, there were those who said that this was a promise that couldn't be kept. They said that we would never be able to deliver a VAT reduction for the Bahamian people. The Bahamian people knew prior government lacked both the will and the skill necessary to navigate us out of these perilous times. But here we are, 2 months into a 5-year term, and what they deemed impossible, my government has made possible. Madam Speaker, we looked at the fiscal reality before us and realized that there was simply no way that increasing the VAT rate to 15% just to keep a few exemptions and for the government to pay VAT for wealthy foreign companies was not a good idea. As Bahamians say, we just couldn't make it make sense, Madam Speaker. The IMF review of the Bahamian tax system implemented by the previous administration described the kind of exemption-riddled VAT regime with the government paying VAT for wealthy foreign companies as reducing efficiency. This is how the IMF described it, Madam Speaker. Reduce efficiency, lowering revenue, and increasing administrative and compliance costs. To retain that approach would have been counterproductive and wrong. That to change the approach. Making matters worse, that same report indicated that exemption and zero ratings are and I quote, an inefficient way of achieving redistribution objectives, which is another way of saying that paying VAT for rich foreign companies on select items is detrimental to working class and low-income households. It's interesting. The former member for St. Anne's was on the news. He was in the news the other day, proudly proclaiming they ignored the experts in setting their VAT policy. But, Madam Speaker, ignoring experts in order to implement a less efficient, more costly system that brings in less revenue is nothing to boast about. We have been very intentional with our VAT reforms. The proposed bill does not reimpose VAT on home insurance, nor does it impose VAT on rental of non-commercial properties. What the proposed bill does is make the purchase of fuel for private planes a VAT expense, VATable. That was not the case under the previous administration. They don't like to talk about how they made the government pay the VAT on fuel for private planes. VAT was originally exempt on transshipment services, which means they didn't have to pay VAT, and the governments therefore didn't have to refund it. That is the international standard. The previous administration changed this treatment so the government had to give a refund on services that they did not generate VAT in the first place for. In essence, Madam Speaker, the government had to pay the VAT on these transshipment services. These foreign companies experienced a windfall of millions and millions of dollars on the backs of Bahamian families and companies. This was a classic move by the previous administration. Tax breaks for themselves, their wealthy supporters, and favored foreigners. Tax increases on the backs of ordinary Bahamians. That's their move, classic. Stranger still was the decision to pay refunds for the period during which these services providers were not eligible. These refunds were casually put into the budget as prior year arrears. So here you had the spectacle of the government amending the VAT legislation to give refunds to non-Bahamian companies with billions of dollars under the guise of an unpaid bill left by a PLP administration. This is indefensible, an absolute disgrace. Let me just, so that I'll refer you all to some reports that you could look at. We don't shoot from the hips. This is not ad hoc, right? A team of experts at the University of the Bahamas ran various simulations of VAT models and the projected impact of each as a part of the Bahamas Recovery and Sustainable Growth Project. In their simulations, various VAT rates were modeled, including an increase to 14%, not 15%, while retaining existing exemptions, as well as a 10% VAT rate with limited exemptions and not paying VAT for wealthy transshipment companies. Across the board, this 10% rate was the only rate that sustained government revenues while showing positive projections related to economic growth, employment, and income inequality. Only the 10% rate with the broad removal of zero-rated items achieved this result. This is the experts at UB's findings. In our approach, we are sensitive to the needs of the Bahamian people. For the special economic zones still in recovery from Hurricane Dorian, and for low-income homes with minimal electricity bills, VAT exemptions will be retained. This decision may result in minimal losses in VAT revenues, but this administration believes it is fruitless to have large bank accounts while our people are starving. My grandfather used to say, why have your barn full of produce when your child getting to school hungry? This is what we meant by striking the right balance. Yes, we understand that there is a need to address government's fiscal situation, and we're doing that. But we also have to take care of our people.
Yes.
I want the Bahamian people to know that our VAT decisions are supported by data, research, and consultations with local and global experts. We considered every scenario possible, and at the end of our research and consultations, we were confident that we were making the right choice. So those who seek to mischaracterize our decision-making know that there are independent experts at UB, within the public service, and internationally, whose data-backed work, you'll likewise be attempting to mischaracterize. Madam Speaker, there are those out there who want the Bahamian people to take a very narrow view of this supplementary budget. They feel that they have successfully muddied the waters on the benefits of what we are doing by directing the public's focus to just a few items. Meanwhile, they are ignoring the plethora of data and research backing everything that we do. In recognition of this fact, my administration began crafting policies to bring immediate, targeted relief to the Bahamian people. We have increased recurrent expenditure by $53,291,143, with most of this increase coming in the Ministry of Public Service, whose budget has been increased by $19 $19,620,583 to fund pensions and gratuities for retired civil servants. We are taking care of our retirees. We are also bringing annual incremental increases back for civil servants. These increments were put on hold by the former administration, even as they awarded handsome contracts to their well-connected friends. The result was that even if the amount paid each year was the same, annual inflation was eating into the salaries of civil servants. I will not allow that to happen under this administration. We will look out, and we look out for civil servants. The budget of the Ministry of Finance has been increased by $31,134,550, of which $30 million is allocated to the extension of the unemployment benefit program. Note that we are not just extending the unemployment program until the end of the year, we are also putting in place a $500 lump sum payment that will be sent out just in time for Christmas. So in this budget, we have an across-the-board decrease. We have an across-the-board decrease in VAT based on international best practices, and a return to the payment of annual increments for thousands of civil servants. We have the extension of the unemployment program and a lump sum payment of $500 to current beneficiaries. We have an increase to pensions at every payout level and the payment of owed gratuities. I challenge any objective observer to listen to this list and form an honest opinion about whether our policies represent a relief to the Bahamian people. The naysayers will try to direct your attention to a narrow list of hand-picked issues. They are choosing to ignore the abundance of great things for the Bahamian people in this supplementary budget. Of course, there are certain trade-offs that had to be made for this relief budget to be made a reality. But we have done the groundwork. We have consulted widely, and we are confident that the budget before us today will empower the Bahamian people. And if anyone opposite disagrees with that, I'll direct them to ask the civil servants about their increments. I'll ask the government employees about the promotions that are being rolled out. Ask pensioners if they're benefiting from the increase in their pensions. Ask the unemployed about the lump sum payments and extension of their benefits. They will let you know. The net impact of this budget should be rightly viewed in its totality, considering the VAT reduction in the context of the many targeted forms of relief, as well as the many items that reduction can be applied to. We're not talking about a list of 22 items here. We're talking about a reduction to every good and every service Bahamians pay for on a daily basis. Not just 22 items. The thousands of items in the grocery store are not just 22. We're talking items like vehicles, plane tickets, utility bills, car insurance, spending money in restaurants, fast food, alcohol, and the list goes on. Not just 22 items. So, Madam Speaker, as I indicated, addressing the government's financial issues is a major priority of this supplemental budget. The capital expenditure budget has been reduced by $54,230,383. The agency with the biggest reduction is the Ministry of Health, with a net reduction of $14 million. What we have done is move the $19 million that was allocated for the Rand Hospital in anticipation of major works taking place in the next fiscal year. It can't happen this year. So it doesn't need to have that in your budget now. We have, in the short term, though, put in place the $5 million for hospital repairs and maintenance for this fiscal year.
Yes, yes.
We have also reduced the Ministry of Finance's capital budget by $20,969,998. The highlights of this decrease include over $9,169,998 for IDB capital projects, $4 million for the allocation of the development of the Prospect Ridge subdivision, and $5 million for small business development. The Minister of Transport and Housing, the member for Elizabeth, Joette Colby Davis, has already put into the public domain the facts with respect to Prospect Ridge development. So there's no need to discuss this matter further by me, except at some point, the member of Kalani will have to explain how he came up with the price for these lots when there was no analysis done for the cost of the infrastructure. Our initial review of the project revealed that the development costs the Bahamian people approximately $15 million. Right? And the collective price of the lots do not cover the estimated cost of the infrastructure. Perhaps Prospect Ridge was merely a distraction or a campaign ploy. That's right. Without a real or sincere intention to see it through. It is difficult otherwise to understand the basic lack of analysis and cost projections. Madam Speaker, the Inter-American Development Bank is the country's #1 development partner. It is therefore disappointing to inherit a portfolio of IDB-funded projects where the achievement of the developmental objectives are severely challenged without radical action. In the case of both the Ministry of Works and the Ministry of Finance, and I could add the Ministry of Health. Budget allocations to support IDB-funded activities have been reduced, as there's no likelihood that the expenditures could be incurred before the end of this fiscal year. The supplementary budget also reduces the amount of funding expected from the IDB in this fiscal period. The reduction of the allocation for small business development in the Ministry of Finance budget has been explained by the technical office of the ministry. But for clarity, I'll restate the position here. This administration is firmly committed to small business development. I remind this House that the Bahamas Development Bank, the Venture Capital Fund, and the Small Business Development Center were all established by PLP administration. So that is our commitment and stays there, right? Sustainable small business development requires a supportive environment. The SBDC was designed to assist in providing such an environment. During the pandemic, Bahamian ingenuity took hold at the SBDC, and through an army of private lenders, it was able to provide support to the small business community. This government is interested in seeing this model continue in a structured manner, and at the same time, not have the SBDC duplicate the Bahamas Development Bank's efforts by engaging in direct lending. Madam Speaker, on the revenue side, we have taken a very conservative approach. We have adopted the existing revenue estimates for the remainder of the fiscal year and boosted them by only $92 million more than forecasted. The $92 million simply recognizes the actual revenue above forecast that was recorded in the first quarter of this fiscal year. We have made no adjustment for the ending of the emergency orders, the reestablishment of the Revenue Enhancement Unit, or the continuation of the vaccination program. I note, however, that all of these things are revenue positives. Madam Speaker, we have taken this approach because we are cognizant of the fiscal risks that we face. The $1 billion difference in liabilities discovered upon taking office is perhaps the most visible risk. but it is not the only fiscal risk before us. We are awaiting the final report from a private sector accounting firm on this matter, but I think I should be clear on a few things. The methodology used to derive this number is the same methodology which should have been used in the pre-election report, as specified in the Fiscal Responsibility Act. Hopefully, the accountant's report will shed light on why this methodology was not used in the pre-election report. The $1 billion figure contains liabilities that were known and immediately payable. For example, there was the underfunding of pensions and gratuities for civil servants, which have now been incorporated into the supplementary budget. It also contains debt maturities, for which no refinancing arrangements have been made as of the 30th of September 2021. This will include the $246 million loan assumed by the government on behalf of BPL and the $167 million promissory note issued by Resolve for the purchase of distressed assets of the Bank of the Bahamas. I can, at this time, say comfortably that refinancing arrangements for those obligations have now been put in place. Madam Speaker, the $1 billion figure also includes contracts for which no funding was provided in the May budget. This includes over $100 million in contracts executed by the Ministry of Works for which no funding was provided. A significant portion of the $1 billion relates to contingent liabilities related to the government's breach of contracts. But this is not the lion's share of the amount identified. Rather, the lion's share identified relates to obligations known to the government that was simply ignored in a seemingly violation of the Fiscal Responsibility Act. This is an important distinction which may have escaped some who have made simplistic and disingenuous public comments about the comparison of apples and oranges. Madam Speaker, I'd be remiss if I do not speak about the Bahamas Public Parks and Beaches Authority. In 2021, the 2021-22 fiscal year, it had been approved a budget of $15.2 million. Beaches and Parks, approved budget. The Parliament voted $15.2 million. After contingencies, its total budget was around $28 million, an increase of 86% against budget, an increase that coincided with electioneering. I am now told that because of new contracts issued in the months of July, August, and September of this year, the projected expenditure of the authority for this fiscal year is $37 million from 15. That's an increase of almost 150% against the budgeted amount, and in dollars, it is an increase of $22 million. Right now, recalling now, Parliament only authorized $15.2 million. Now, I want that to sink in for a moment. I also want it to sink in that a number of these contracts were awarded to clean, middle, and high-end subdivisions like Blair and Westridge, just to name a few. The member for St. Barnabas will undoubtedly have a lot of explaining to do. As a result of this reckless and irresponsible behavior by the member as of September 30th, 2021, after only 4 months in this fiscal budget, that means you have 8 more months left. Right? After 4 months, the authority had already utilized more than 60% of its budget for the entire year. I remind you, like I say, 8 months still remains. And guess what? The roadside contracts in Kalani had risen to almost 400,000 and more. Yeah. And that short, look now, I talk about these 3 months, 400,000. I suppose that, none of us should be, this shouldn't be surprising when we remember that 20 million on sidewalks at the height of the pandemic. That's what they're spending. When hospitals were collapsing and Bahamians were homeless and hungry. Even so, the truth of it all will be revealed.
Members?
Yeah. Even so, the truth of it all will be revealed, and they will be held to account for their reckless decisions made for the short-term political benefit at the expense of the country. Madam Speaker, I've highlighted these numbers to demonstrate that the talk of the previous administration with respect to fiscal transparency, accountability, and fiscal discipline was just talk. The public purse was under constant threat during the administration. There's also the issue of IDB loans in the tens of millions of dollars, which lack a clear strategy. I'll return to speak about that at another time. Madam Speaker, I do have a wish to give comfort and assurance to the Bahamian people that the team in the Ministry of Finance has already begun the process to address our unfunded liabilities, just as we have done in the past. This would include the creation of a sinking fund or funds to ensure that when obligations are due, we're able to pay them. It is for this reason the public will not see a line item for the $1 billion in the supplementary budget. But I wish to be clear that this administration does not intend to default on any of its obligations. This administration will address its financial obligations in an orderly and timely manner. We will not betray the trust of persons who have engaged in business with the Bahamian government in good faith. Yes. Madam Speaker, I also wish to address the talk in the public sphere about the $2.1 million decrease in the education budget. The decrease was the result of the findings of an audit to remove all inactive persons from the payroll. Other savings were identified due to the continuation of virtual learning, with certain expenses associated with in-person learning, and thus not required for a portion of the school year. To be clear, the operations of the Ministry and the Department of Education were not impacted by this removal of inactive people from the payroll or the reduction in expenses due to virtual learning. The Ministry of Youth and Sports and Culture saw a $1.9 million decrease in its budget. That represented savings due to there being no jump canoe parade this year. The Ministry of the Environment saw a $7.8 million decrease. That represents monies transferred to the ministry related to the Bahamas National Trust, as well as the transfer of the Bahamas Public Parks and Beaches Authority to the Ministry of Works and Utilities. So that's where you find those funds. The Ministry of Disaster and Preparedness Management. Well, you want to talk about this one? I come back. We'll talk about this one later. The Ministry of Disaster, Preparedness, Management, and Reconstruction no longer exists. I want to make it clear to the people of the Bahamas, and especially the people impacted by recent storms, we have not cut the nation's disaster response budget. Instead, the now defunct ministry's budget has been moved to the Office of the Prime Minister, where it can go towards the Bahamas Disaster Reconstruction Authority. As you can see, many of the so-called cuts that have been pointed out are simply instances in which the government has streamlined for efficiency or reallocated funds to achieve the same objective. Madam Speaker, in this budget cycle, we'll see the launch of the Public Debt Advisory Committee to strengthen the nation's debt strategy. We'll see the reestablishment of a fully resourced revenue enhancement unit with the goal of minimizing tax avoidance and fraud. We'll also see the formation of the Revenue Policy Committee, comprised of our brightest fiscal and economic minds, to develop reforms related to revenue collection and policy. Our fiscal goals remain unchanged. As our term progresses, we will unveil further reforms to strengthen the country's revenue model. For the record, I would like to note that this debate on the supplementary budget will delay the tabling of the Fiscal Strategy Report. This report, which is mandated by the Fiscal Responsibility Act, will be tabled immediately after this debate and will provide a technical underpinning for our plan going forward. However, the discussion of revenue options to achieve the 25% revenue to GDP target that is set out in the supplementary budget will be deferred until the mid-year budget presentation. Madam Speaker, my administration's main objectives upon taking office were to provide immediate relief to the Bahamian people, wage a more effective battle against COVID-19, stimulate economic recovery, and address government's financial goals. This supplementary budget lays the foundations for us to make significant gains in each of these areas, but it accomplishes so much more than that. In order to significantly increase investments in small businesses, we launched a sovereign wealth fund and a national wealth fund. Improve our networking infrastructure, improve ease of doing business, upgrade our medical infrastructure, and invest in renewable energy, among other medium-term initiatives. We must successfully achieve progress on these immediate and short-term goals. This is not to mention the long-term goals that are dependent on sustained success and growth over the course of our five-year term. Madam Speaker, this supplementary budget begins the process of writing the course for a nation that has endured crisis after crisis, tragedy after tragedy. We will not remind Bahamians of how unprecedented these times are. The people already know that. We're not interested in merely highlighting the problems. We are interested in solutions. Yes, sir. Yeah. We're not asking the Bahamian people to grade us on a curve just because we are governing during difficult times. Instead, we want to be judged by the results we deliver. Yes. Assess our performance based on the impact we have despite the times we are living in. Yes. That is the test of true leadership. Our objectives remain the same as always: to deliver a more fair and equitable society with opportunities for everyone. Yes. As the Deputy Prime Minister said during our campaign, and I think the member for Golden Isles often quotes, we want to make wealth more common in the Congress. That is the vision we are striving for. And while there may be realities that place constraints on us at times, know that we are committed to getting this nation as close to that ideal as possible. Yes. This supplementary budget has within it the promise of a Bahamas that has serviced its debt and met its long-term revenue targets. Contained within this budget is the promise of a booming post-pandemic economy and robust social outreach and healthcare initiatives that will produce a healthier, more empowered population. Within this budget are the seeds of a diversified economy filled with employment and investment opportunities for all Bahamians. The budget before us today is a first step in that new direction. The basis for our mandate for the Bahamian people is contained in our blueprint for change, which incorporates the economic plan we published back in March. The speech from the throne contained our formal commitment to the policies via which our New Day administration will improve the lives of the Bahamian people and to build a better Bahamas for the future. We are guided by our Christian faith and an unshakable belief that we must always place first the lives and well-being of the people. Hence, this budget focuses on directly changing the lives of those in need. My faith has also taught me the importance of having a solid foundation in everything that I do. I'm reminded of the line in the Christian hymn, "On Christ the solid rock, I stand." All of the ground is sinking sand. With this supplementary budget, this administration has established a solid foundation to guide the administration over the next 5 years. May God bless all the people of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And may God bless you. Thank you.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Central Van Bahama.
Madam Speaker, to you through you to the member for Cat Island, you often referred in your presentation to a report as prepared by the experts at the UB, as well as other experts that convince you that the 10% across the board. Well, pretty much, yeah, you referred to that document. Are you prepared to lay it, or at least let us know if we can get a copy of that? I'd like to read it also. You prepared to lay it? All right, thank you. All right.
Thank you, honorable member. Is there a seconder? The chair recognizes the honorable member for Seabreeze.
Madam Speaker, I rise on behalf of the beautiful constituency of Seabreeze, as I am honored to second the bill on the 2021-2022 supplementary budget and valued added tax amendment number 2. The number 2 seemed an obvious trend as I prepared for today. My second time to rise in these honorable chambers to make my second contribution, and this value-added tax amendment sets to maintain a campaign promise of reducing the value-added tax by 2. I had to pause to reflect on the power of this number. No, I don't mean to box it or play it straight, but rather there's something significant about this number on today. With my biblical upbringings, I had to ponder on the power of this number 2. In my brief research, I summarized that the number 2 is usually associated with harmony, balance, consideration, and love. That's exactly what this New Day government is set to represent for the Bahamian people. In every act of governance, with every decision, we must and we will take into consideration the impact of the lives of every Bahamian. We are dedicated to return to the Bahamian people representation that demonstrates compassion, that listens, that shows love and respect to the very people we've been called to serve. We are here to restore harmony, a sense of stability in our physical communities and stability in our fiscal commitments. As we aim to balance the budget and usher in a new day for our country, to usher in economic relief, and to restore to the Bahamian people a sense of hope that our future is promising, bright, and attainable. I wish to pause at this time to recognize the 61st anniversary of the first time women voted in this country. Yes. It was on November 26, 1962, that women joined equally into the electoral voice in this country. The University of the Bahamas' website is quoted as summarizing the women of the suffrage movement as fierce, intelligent, and determined. They had dreams of a Bahamas that went far beyond the enfranchisement of women. They wanted human rights and social services for every Bahamian and advocated the purposeful, informed community engagement of every citizen. We honor the legacy, sacrifice, and dedication of Mrs. Mary Ingram, Mrs. Eugenia Lockhart, Mrs. Georgiana K. Simonet, Mrs. Mabel Walker, Dame Albertha Isaacs, Dame Doris Johnson, and the thousands of women and men who supported them. While we've made progress and strides, I am reminded that there is much work to be done. As women continue to birth the future generations of this country, they must be equally at the table to birth new policies and new programs that will transform this country, better develop our people, especially our young people, and elevate our way of government and nation building. We can only get this right, do this right, when we work together. Reiterating the power of the number 2, when women and men come together, there is a duality of perspective and harmony in execution. There are great expectations for my sister colleagues as more women enter these honorable halls. However, I challenge us all, as women, as men, as mothers, as fathers, grandmothers and grandfathers, as leaders called to serve to equally advocate for the balancing of the scales, for the equal representation of men and women, for the equal protection by the law and all, especially for our children, and for equal opportunities for all. We are called equally to the great work left to be done. It would also be remiss of me if I did not recognize the Zonta Club of New Providence, who are here with us today. Madam Speaker, the Zonta Club has been extremely instrumental in bringing about awareness to gender-based violence as we recognize 16 days of activism to end such violence. Madam Speaker, those 16 days began on November 25th and ends on December 10th. And I want to publicly state my support for this initiative, as I too will be wearing my orange pin and white ribbon to bring about awareness. Madam Speaker, over the past few weeks, my LB team and I have been in Seabreeze continuing the work we started and the work requested by constituents. Repairs to the roads, particularly potholes, removal of derelict vehicles, repairs and maintenance to the various parks, repairing key light fixtures, and working with the respective entities to ensure immediate action is given to these much-needed areas. I wish to thank my respective colleagues for their diligence in ensuring that these repairs are addressed swiftly. Seabreeze and I thank you. Madam Speaker, as I speak with my constituents, they share that when they look at the work this government has done in just the past 2 months, compared to the damage of the other administration did over the past 4 years, more tragically and more devastatingly over the past 2 years, it is truly night and day. I know the previous administration are pretty familiar with fishy deals. It would be remiss of me if I did not note some mind-boggling decisions made by them on a grander scale. For example, to offer a major cruise line a 150-year deal. Let me repeat, a 150-year lease on Paradise Island is the height of incompetence and disrespect for the Bahamian people. While governments ought to be open to working along with foreign investors and companies, selling our souls and selling our birthright is not on the table. That's right. In the deal, Madam Speaker, the rent for the prime property on Paradise Island annually is reported $140,000 per year. A mere $140,000 a year for land on Paradise Island. Madam Speaker, young professionals cannot even find housing for that price. Yet the former administration rented prime property on Paradise Island for $140,000 per year. Madam Speaker, there are many Bahamians who are livid about this land deal. Madam Speaker, there are young Bahamians, men and women, intelligent, cutting-edge Bahamians who are fighting to become wealthy in this country so that they can become established, so that they can be investors of their own nation, their own land that our forefathers and mothers fought for with blood, sweat, and tears. And the hardest frontier for Black Bahamians is economic wealth. And yes, Madam Speaker, we achieved majority rule. We broke through the economic barrier just a bit. But when we see deals such as this, we have to be angry. Before the former administration came into office, the late Dr. Miles Monroe warned us, saying that the 2017 election will either take us forward or backwards. Dr. Monroe knew exactly what he was saying because the former administration took us backwards. The deal and other disgraceful decisions robbed the Bahamian people blind. I want to make it clear, the former administration did not cause Hurricane Dorian. They did not cause the pandemic. But during these crises, we hold them responsible and accountable for treating Bahamians worse than second-class citizens. While Bahamians were stuck abroad, the F&M administration allowed a private plane to land because someone needed to bury their dog. I love animals, Madam Speaker, but there were people losing loved ones and not allowed to enter the country, needing to be with their families and not allowed in. They only knew how to help a selected few. While Bahamian couples had to postpone their wedding celebration, forfeit their deposits and abide by the regulations, they looked on and watched while the incompetent authority gave permission to foreign couples to have their weddings in large numbers. While the former DPM was enjoying VAT-free airplane parts, Bahamians were paying VAT on their car parts for vehicles they use to get around every single day. The former Minister of Tourism was able to bring in his washes here, cleans here, and presses here, industrial dryers and washers VAT-free, while Bahamians had to pay VAT on all washers and dryers for their household needs. The last government was thrown out of office, leaving the country facing 3 major crises.
The chair recognizes.
Thank you very much.
Member for Marco City.
I honestly did not want to interrupt the member for Seabreeze. However, I'm sorry, this is not urban renewal where you bully people before, so just serve it. Just serve it, okay? Okay? So,
Honorable members,
Madam Speaker, I believe this matter has been litigated in the House a number of times, and I did not want to interrupt, but a couple of things. One is, it was the PLP administration that placed the duty at the rate it was with respect to washers and dryers. And secondly, and secondly, at least allow me to finish the point, just so the public can be clear. Allow me to finish the point. And so the point of order is we're misleading the public when we give the impression that ministers made a decision on a matter that we got a budget. In the budget itself were the rates that you were referring to, member for Seabreeze. That's one. Secondly, it was on industrial, it was not on industrial washers and dryers. It was those that affected the homes. So it's misleading to give the public the impression that a benefit that was given was a benefit given to a business related to any minister. It is untrue. The PLP administration set those budget rates. The PLP administration. It was a budget that we merely continued, and it did not benefit the member that was falsely alluded to. It did not occur. Nor did it benefit the former minister of aviation of finance. It did not benefit him. So 2 ministers were maligned incorrectly in this House, and I believe the member for Cat Island, Rumkins, and Salvador have the facts and know that it is not correct.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Engliston.
Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, I happen to have been sitting in the House during that budget debate. And the point that I had raised at the time is that because the Minister of Finance, because he made this argument, in fact, he said he didn't read it, which I find shocking that a Minister of Finance would say he didn't read it. But at some point, he knew it included airplane parts. And what his argument was that I said to him that he ought to have declared his interest because ethics requires it. And he did not do it. He got all upset and said, "What are you saying? What are you saying?" So whatever, who put it there, who ain't put it there, it was not denied that it was a benefit and that there was a conflict. And it was established, it was not declared in this parliament. And so, I hear the argument of the PLP put it there, but it was an F&M budget that went through the F&M cabinet, where F&M, at least one F&M minister, did not deny that it had an impact on his own interests. And it was not declared to the parliament.
Thank you, honorable member.
Madam Speaker, I'm just wondering whether or not the member for Seabreeze would be prepared to withdraw the references to the minister with responsibility for tourism, since in fact, again, I maintain the argument that I presented. I don't want to relitigate it. I'm prepared to do so. If not, I ask that it be struck from the record because it is not so.
The chair recognizes the honorable member.
The member drew me into the debate on this issue, and if I could, I'm quite familiar with the issues, right? The member for Freetown at the time never denied that he was getting a benefit from the movement of tax on washers, dryers. He never denied it. No, he never did. No, I remember specifically his issue was attempting to distinguish between industrial and household, one, and secondly, that look, this started with the PLP. The PLP gave him the benefits. So he was saying basically, you all did it, and we're doing it too. But it was not, he never denied that because he uses the parts that he can get could be used in his business as well. So it's not that and that's my recollection, and that's what happened.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for
It's not to occupy time on this matter. Why don't you allow for the Hansard to reflect?
Yes.
We shall research, and we will come back to the issue.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable member for Seabreeze, when you come back, please present the facts.
I will do, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
The last government was thrown out of office.
Madam Speaker, I'm leaving it on the record.
Sorry.
Why we get Hansard?
Yes, it will be on the record, and she has said that she has researched, and then she brings the facts.
Madam Speaker, let me say this final thing, and I'll be very quick about this. What I am concerned about is, while beautifully delivered, what is happening is we're impugning the reputation of two persons who are not here and giving an impression that out of the thousands of items we have discussed, these two items, the F&M Minister-led administration has singled these out to benefit members. That is the tone and the tenor of the message. So my point is, it could be more palatable, as Engliston says, in terms of detail, paying attention to some details, but it cannot be right that you seek to give the impression that persons were working in their respective ministries seeking to find a personal benefit on some narrow items. It is unfair. And I believe that the member for Cat Island is aware that in wash houses, they are dealing with industrial machines rather than just the personal ones that are used.
Look, Madam Speaker, right, at the end of the day, right, the member is engaged in a business that concerns washing machines. Right, that's the first thing. There was a benefit given to persons who would want to buy and or who was in the business of washing machines. So no. Listen, what I'm saying, so if you are attempting to conflate an allegation with an opinion. One could see that there's an opinion. My view is that he benefited. And I said that to him many times in this house. And he never denied it. All he attempted to do is say the benefits he was getting was also showered upon him by the PLP. That's how he denied it to me.
Yes. Honorable members. Honorable members. I have asked the honorable member for Seabreeze, to bring the facts to support what she just said. Okay? And we are moving on from this. And when she brings those facts and it is in support of what she is saying, then we will move forward.
Madam Speaker,
I have made a judgment. I have made a judgment. And I'm asking you now, honorable member, to please take your seat.
Madam Speaker, the
Let's move on.
hasn't solved this issue.
I did not say the Hansard. I have asked the honorable member for Seabreeze to bring the facts, and when she brings the facts, then we will have that matter resolved. That is all I'm asking.
We'll have that today.
No, we will not have that today. We will have that in the next sitting of the House. I will give her the opportunity. Okay? Now that I have spoken, and let's respect what the chair would have just said. Member for Seabreeze, can you please continue?
The last government was thrown out of office, leaving the country facing three major crises: a health crisis, an economic crisis, and a governance crisis. Madam Speaker, I remember in the middle of the pandemic last year, the incompetent authority mandated an immediate shutdown and curfew without any notice for Bahamians. This action made it very clear that the F&M administration did not understand that all Bahamians do not live alike. Not everyone's economic circumstances are the same. There were some Bahamians who were able to stock up on food and medication, and there were others who relied on going out to work every day in order to find ways to live. Also, there were other families with special needs children and relatives who had daily medical needs to cater to. Madam Speaker, the former administration was out of touch with the needs and cries of the Bahamian people. I believe it's important that every Bahamian is able to understand the purpose and benefits of this bill. Like many young people would say, make it make sense. Firstly, there will be an extra dollar added to the national debt. In fact, this budget will begin reducing the high level of borrowing. Secondly, while we cannot engage in borrowing because the former administration did that in excess, this government is striking a balance to bring immediate relief. Thirdly, the F&M administration did not comply with the IMF to reveal to them the recipients of monies they borrowed. Meanwhile, this current government is waiting on the results of a detailed report which would give us an indication of exactly where we are fiscally. However, Madam Speaker, the budget will reintroduce the annual lump sum increments to civil servants, which was stopped by the former administration. Additionally, the promotions for government employees will be rolled out. Relief will also come to pensioners who will see an increase in their pensions. Relief will also come in the form of VAT reduction. Having the VAT rate across the board on all designated items gives the government the room it needs to lower the VAT rate to 10%. Our blueprint for change, an economic plan, highlighted VAT being reduced to 10%. That will no longer be a plan. It will now be in action. Therefore, relief to the Bahamian people from this new day government will come in many forms. Madam Speaker, had the Bahamian people left the incompetent authority in office, today would be quite different, with Bahamian people seeing an increase, possibly to 15% in VAT. Meanwhile, there's an increase to the budget in the Ministry of Public Service in order to fund pensions and gratuities for required civil servants.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Kalani.
I'm resistant to interrupt the member, and I would make most of my comments at the end of a speech, but I cannot allow the increase of VAT of 15% to remain on the record. I've said previously that that was never our intention, but there are other matters that you said that is totally incorrect, and I will address those.
For clarity, I member for Seabreeze, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Did you indicate that, or did you say that you believe?
Possibly.
Possibly.
Yes.
Possibly. Okay. Thank you. You may proceed.
The Ministry of Finance has increased the budget to secure the extension of the unemployment program, and relief will be in the $500 lump sum coming in December. Madam Speaker, it was critical for the government in this supplementary budget to strike a prudent balance between providing immediate relief to the Bahamian people and staying away from more debt. Madam Speaker, we are delivering on our promises contained in our economic plan and the blueprint. We said we would do it, and as you can see, the new day started on day one. In keeping with the commitments we made to the Bahamian people, the New Day government began its free testing in the Family Islands, including North Eleuthera, the Berry Islands, and Inagua. And now plans for nationwide testing is being finalized. This New Day government has taken the bull by the horns, and we will do what we said we will do. The reality, Madam Speaker, is that the Bahamians need immediate tax relief, and that's exactly what this government is now delivering. Beyond managing the budget and jumpstarting our economy, Madam Speaker, almost immediately after elections, the honorable member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador extended the time for curfew to 11:59 simply because there was no science as to having the earlier curfew. It just wasn't adding up. Madam Speaker, even now, there are Bahamians and business owners who speak to me and are happy with that one decision that got our economy moving again, allowing restaurants to open later, for service workers to pick up more hours, for beauty industry professionals to take on more clients, for working parents to have more time to run errands, go grocery shopping, and pick up essential items. And most recently, Madam Speaker, the straw market has reopened, allowing an opportunity for many Bahamians to provide for their families. Madam Speaker, Bahamians have to live. They need to be able to purchase groceries from the food store, put gas in their car, send their children to school, keep their lights on, pay their insurance, and keep a roof over their head. Madam Speaker, I wish to express the preamble of our Constitution, which makes it very clear that in our free and democratic sovereign nation, that no man, woman, or child should ever be slave or bondsman to anyone, or their labor exploited, or their lives frustrated by deprivation. Madam Speaker, for far too long, our people have been frustrated and deprived of essentials such as food, shelter, safe communities, education, healthcare, and connectivity. They've been frustrated by exclusion, discrimination, barriers to ownership, and lack of opportunities. What has made it worse? They've felt taken for granted, disrespected, and disregarded. While for many, a new day is just a catchy slogan, I believe it's a message of hope, a symbol of resilience, a reminder to hold on that better days are truly ahead. September 16, 2021 ushered in a new day for the Bahamas, an administration that with God's will return to many of us a sense of pride, dignity, and respect. An administration that will prioritize decisions that will move our nation forward. Broker deals that will widely benefit our nation, not just for the now, but for years to come. A government that will strike the balance. As I take my seat, Madam Speaker, I leave you all with the reminder and the importance of that number two. May the prayer of St. Francis be our guiding principle as we restore balance and harmony to our nation. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is discord, union. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. It is an honor that I second the bill on the 2021-2022 supplementary budget and value-added tax amendment number 2. Madam Speaker.
It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a second time and committed. A bill for an act for the appropriation of further diverse sum of money for and toward defraying the expenses of the government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas during the fiscal year commencing 1st July 2021 and ending 30th of June 2022. As many?
Madam Speaker, I'm rising first on the point of order as opposed to commencing my speech.
Yes, sir.
The member was delivering such a eloquent speech, and I have the greatest respect for both the member, and both her parents, and I did not want to interrupt her. But I wanted to clarify several matters. The first, with respect to, the member's speech had inaccuracies and personal belief, which must be clarified. She spoke about competent authority of the government shutting down the country immediately. And I think she meant locking down the country immediately without giving individuals any form of warning. Madam Speaker, that was explained on numerous occasions. On one occasion, when we had given 3 to 5 day notice, we noted that there were mass influx of personnel into various different islands, and subsequently we were confronted with an escalation of COVID infection throughout not only New Providence, but throughout the other family islands. And in order to protect the family islands moving forward, it was essential to do an immediate shutdown so as to prevent that mass migration to the family islands. And rather than fighting COVID here in New Providence and Grand Bahama, we were being faced with fighting COVID throughout the entire Bahamas, which would have been extremely difficult and challenging. The other matter the member spoke about was the lease of the property on Paradise Island. It has always been the government's policy that we do not sell crown land to foreigners or grant crown land to foreigners. As a matter of fact, we look at the global picture as to the advantage of leasing crown land to foreign nationals rather than 1 or 2 individuals benefiting. We look at the global picture to ensure that the nation would benefit. With respect to RCCL, yes, it's a lease of $140,000 per year, 25 years with extension, and I would explain that in a few minutes. But the benefits certainly outweigh the lease of the property. Madam Speaker, RCL would embark on a $55 million investment on that particular property, and in fact, they are even increasing that. There would be many jobs created for Bahamians. All of the investment on the property itself would be run by Bahamians, and RCCL will assist Bahamians with funding to ensure that they are intimately involved. In addition to that, Madam Speaker, there would be 80 Bahamians who would be involved in the construction, excellent salaries, and upon completion of the project, there would be an additional 150 to 200 Bahamians who would be hired at a salary of $30,000 to $40,000 per annum. And most importantly, RCCL presently brings about 1 million tourists to this Bahamas. With this project, the numbers would increase, which would benefit all Bahamians, especially those who within the hospitality and tourist industry. In addition to that, individuals must be mobilized to the island by ferry boats. RCCL will enter engagement with Bahamians so that Bahamians would be involved and possibly own the ferry boat between the cruise line and the property itself. We know today that the ferry boats that are utilized today may not necessarily meet the certification or the standards that would be required by the International Maritime Organization. And therefore, our CCL would ensure that the Bahamians have adequate ferry boats that would meet the certification and the standards. This would create vast entrepreneurship and wealth for Bahamians as opposed to one individual. And I won't get into that at this particular time, but the decision was Bahamians at large would be involved as opposed to one or two individuals. And Madam Speaker, I agree that the standard lease time is 100 years. I accept that. And I am certain that our CCL will have no problems with reverting rather than 150 to 100 years. And those are the facts, Madam Speaker. Now, may I rise for my speech?
Honorable member, please note that you'll be speaking for 1 hour.
That is absolutely correct. Madam Speaker, before I commence my contribution to this debate, I would like to congratulate the member for Marco City in his elevation to becoming the leader of this great party. And I'm certain that he will do well and he will have the support of all his parliamentarians, including myself, as we continue to move forward to replace that government on that side. I would also like to congratulate the other two members who also ran an excellent race in the leadership, and I want to remind them that losing does not necessarily mean that they are losers. They are all leaders in their own right, and not many would have had the opportunity to do what they have done. So I congratulate them on that. Madam Speaker, I am honored to lead the debate here this morning for the Free National Movement. And an essential component of getting our fiscal house in order and the economy in better shape is keeping the COVID-19 virus under control. All of the government economic proposals will take place in the context of the ongoing pandemic. And this includes matters related to inflation, the problems with the global supply chain of food and goods, and how international travel will continue to be affected by the pandemic. We remain in a pandemic economy. Our economy has improved, due mostly in part to policies put in place by the last F&M government, including the sourcing of COVID-19 vaccines. The Minister of Tourism was recently in the news happily announcing the new Virgin Atlantic airline service from the United Kingdom to the Bahamas. This was already in the works from the previous F&M government. So too, many other investments, initiatives, and tourism developments. The F&M was getting the economy back on track. We sincerely hope that the PLP will not jeopardize the good work that was done already. Madam Speaker, we will hear much criticism from the government over the F&M's previous stewardship of the economy. Of course, we will hear little of what was done well. I wish to repeat that I said in my last budget communication as the Minister of Finance, there are long-term structural issues we must address. to promote more dynamic growth, more opportunity, and greater ownership of the economy by Bahamians. And as was clearly stated a few minutes ago, there'll be great ownership via the Paradise Island property that was leased by our CCL. One regional economist described our long-term challenges. She also commended our 2021-22 national budget, which some dedicated critics sought to minimize or ignore. Caribbean economist Maria Dacaran stated in her analysis, and I quote, "The fact that the government of the Bahamas has maintained a reasonable level of socioeconomic stability so far is testament to their capabilities, political will, and ability to access assistance from external parties, including the multilateral lending institution, most recently, the World Bank." She went on to say, by no means could this be an easy task, and the government is certainly dealing with a lot more than many, at least in a regional context. She added, "I believe that the commitment to fiscal responsibility articulated in this budget and demonstrated by this administration is commendable and unique. I am not aware of any independent country in the Caribbean which has legislated and implemented any such fiscal responsibility framework, fiscal rules, without the commitment to do so under the IMF-supported programs." She also went on to state, "An orderly debt profiling exercise is preferable versus a disorderly debt restructure balance of payment crisis." It is worth reiterating here that any such outcome would not necessarily reflect on the authorities as much as it reflects on the Bahamas' acute vulnerability and indeed that of every country in the Caribbean. May I also remind the House that because of the pandemic, we went through the worst economic crisis in our modern history. It was much worse than the 2008 Great Recession. It was much worse than any fiscal crisis experienced by any government in an independent Bahamas. And the PLP must now deal with the twin public health and economic challenges. They said they had a 10-point plan for the economy, and we shall see. I remind the House that under our last national budget, we provided concessions and incentives for Bahamians in areas such as small business development, tourism, agriculture, fisheries, the digital economy, the development of preschools, the blue, green, and orange sectors of economy, among other areas of economic potential and economic growth. There are long-term structural issues that need to be addressed to promote more vigorous economic growth and jobs. What plans does the government have to address the current economic circumstances, long-term growth, and structural issues in our economy? Talking is one thing. Viable plans are something else. Touring all over the place every week is no substitute for good and active governance. Madam Speaker, I wish to address another matter, namely the financing of our deficit in Bahamian dollars versus foreign currency. In supporting the economy, while incurring a larger deficit during the pandemic, the previous F&M government also stimulated higher spending on imports of goods and services than the economy could finance. from the available supply of foreign exchange being earned by the private sector. In 2020, the amount of foreign exchange flowing through the Bahamian economy, and I want you to listen carefully, the amount of foreign exchange flowing through the Bahamian economy was significantly reduced because tourism was the activity most set back by the pandemic. The external reserves would have been depleted to the point of putting the Bahamian currency peg in jeopardy if the government did not identify sufficient foreign currency financing to cover our necessary deficit spending in this pandemic, which meant it would have been great challenges for Bahamians to travel to Miami, to Walmarts and others, because their currency would have been under great duress and stress. The balance struck between reliance of Bahamian dollar and foreign currency borrowing took the central bank's vision into account. In the current fiscal year, foreign currency inflows are projected to improve and the deficit to shrink. And this fiscal and improved state of foreign reserves have created more space to borrow in Bahamian dollars. The annual borrowing plan of the government that was released in July reflected this consideration. The share of the deficit to be financed in Bahamian dollars was already planned to be greater than in the last fiscal year. However, for the overall deficit to be sustainable against the exchange rate peg, some reliance on foreign currency financing, even though diminishing, is still prudent. Madam Speaker, with wave after wave of the COVID-19 virus and its variants, our economy and greater job creation remain in jeopardy. The previous FNM administration sought to balance public health needs and the management of the economy. We in the opposition have serious concerns regarding the government's degree of focus on public health. The pandemic is not over. Indeed, it may be far from over. The Prime Minister seems to want to keep a distance from the pandemic, perhaps for political reasons. He does not seem to be engaged with the pandemic the way most other world leaders are actively engaged.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for West, Grand Bahama and Bimini.
Madam Speaker, for the record, the Prime Minister is deeply engaged and very close to the issue. But he, unlike the previous Prime Minister, works through and works with his cabinet, and more in particular, he works with his Minister of Health, who he has and we have confidence in, and who, by record, has been doing an exceptionally good job. So, Madam Speaker, to suggest that the Prime Minister must follow suit or follow some example need not happen. What must happen is competence. What must happen is leadership. And we're seeing that with our Minister of Health.
Madam Speaker, we have demonstrated clear leadership with the pandemic, and all matters were discussed at cabinet level. And if you look at world leaders, you'd notice that world leaders were intimately involved in addressing the public. That's all we're saying. He should not leave the management of the pandemic mostly to the Minister of Health. The Minister of Health seems confused and scattered. Instead of what seems like a clear and thoughtful plan, he keeps talking and seemingly talking out loud. Yet nearly every day, it seems we get pictures from members of the government of their travels and their tours. They are touring and traveling. They are the touring and traveling government. They seem to prefer style over substance. The governing side seems to spend.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Fort Charlotte. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, first of all, every Bahamian is aware of the period the Honorable Member of Kalani is speaking about. And most Bahamians would have heard from Dr. Dal Regis, more so than the competent authority, with respect to the management of the pandemic. In a democratic country, as the Honorable Member conceded, it is the cabinet. And in 2 months, an entirely new regime has been put forward, which is not dependent on one person as the competent authority. It is within the law. The same advisors who would have advised the Honorable Member when he served as Prime Minister is advising the Honorable Minister of Health. And therefore, what is the object? Is it that the Prime Minister must be an omnipotent or somehow omnipotent when we know from our experience that Dr. Dal Regis spoke to the country certainly much more frequently and more authoritatively than the competent authority?
Thank you, Honorable.
Madam Speaker, I can only say that the pandemic was new to the world, to everyone. And when you review and watch what was happening throughout the world, all world leaders were intimately involved, and I am certain they would have done just like we did, consulted the authorities, after which we would have discussed it in Parliament, and subsequently the Prime Minister, who was the voice of Cabinet, would have made such statements. The governing side seems to spend a significant amount of time flying all over the place with large groups of people at taxpayers' expense. Though cases are down due to the end of the last Delta wave, I again warn the government that we are still in a global health emergency. The new Omicron variant is already spreading around the world. Europe is currently battling a significant wave. Last week, the World Health Organization warned that another 500,000 people may die in Europe alone between now and March of next year. Many of the European countries have vaccination rates significantly higher than the Bahamas. And we are just upward, and the minister can give accurate figures as he speaks. We are just upward of 38 to 40% of our people fully vaccinated. Many countries in Europe have vaccination rates way above 60%. Yet, they are struggling due to a major resurgence of the virus. Austria has even gone into national lockdown. Under this unfocused and touring PLP, the pace of vaccination in the Bahamas has slowed dramatically, despite the number of available vaccines. Rather than using this time when cases are low to focus on real policies to encourage more Bahamians to get vaccinated, this government is traveling and having a good time using people's money. With the vaccine uptake slowdown under the Davis administration, the Bahamas will not be ready when the next waves come. And it could come very soon, Madam Speaker, maybe as they are busy. Where is the government's plan to get our people vaccinated quickly? I asked the government two questions. Where's the science behind their confused and disorganized approach to the pandemic? Second, where's the plan for vaccination? And I'm certain the minister will answer that. Where's the plan for booster shots? Where's the plan for the next wave of the pandemic? And where are the plans to secure the Family Island in the event of the next wave? Where's the science? And where are the plans? It is likely that the Bahamas will need to get 80 or more % of our population fully vaccinated, along with providing boosters to a significant portion of these people in order to finally bring the pandemic under control. Our economy cannot open to its fullest potential until we control the virus. Visitor arrivals will not reach their fullest potential until we control the virus. Government revenue will not get to its highest levels until we control the virus. If we do not get to the high vaccination rates needed, the government may not meet its revenue targets. We will end up in and out of cycles of serious waves. We in the opposition also ask, when will the government fulfill its campaign promise of mass, and I repeat, mass testing? How much will this cost? When they made this promise, many Bahamians assumed that the PLP meant free PCR testing for all. The people are still waiting on the government to deliver. The government has done a small amount of antigen testing, but these tests are not the gold standard. They cannot be relied on as fully conclusive. And the minister, being a physician, is fully aware of false negatives and positives. With the government's free testing pledge, we like the promise. With the government's free testing pledge, will the government free testing pledge be like the promise the PLP made one time ago to double the national investment in education and training? They talk a good game, but often do not deliver. Will the government use the PCR test as the main test? Will the government have adequate supplies for these testing? How often will testing be done? And who will be tested? Will the entire population be regularly tested? What about testing in the Family Islands? Are there sufficient technicians and laboratory facilities to do such mass testing? How long will the results generally take? There are other questions the government needs to answer. How many Johnson & Johnson vaccines remain? And when do they expire? What is the government's plan to get vaccines for children ages 5 to 12? The same PLP that complained about us securing the vaccines while they were in opposition are quickly realizing how difficult it is to secure vaccines. What are the plans and what are the dates for when vaccines can be secured for those 5 to 12? Madam Speaker, our administration did the heavy lifting in the pandemic. We boosted the country's testing capacity. We expanded the hospital system to care for people with COVID-19. We brought on board Doctors Hospital West. We made the South Beach Clinic a care facility for people with infection. We added bed capacity to PMH. It was our administration that made the arrangement to get vaccines we now have. The Bahamas has had access to 3 of the best vaccines in the world due to the work of our administration. The Davis administration must not drop the ball. They have much work to do to continue what we have started. Sadly, the initial actions in government give the Bahamian people little confidence that the PLP is up to the difficult task of ending the pandemic in our country. Madam Speaker, the now governing side made a big show of pledging to cut VAT on the campaign trail. Now that they are in office, Bahamians have gotten a few more details, but there is still a lack of greater clarity. The editorial of the Tribune in October, which I will table at the end, noted, I quote, "How will we afford it? Well, it's not going to be a VAT cut for everything. In fact, for some items, it will be a rise. Breadbasket items will face an increase in VAT from their current 0 rating. Mr. Davis did not clarify which items would no longer be 0 rated, but the list currently includes medicine and items such as bread, butter, baby food, and more. So VAT comes down across the board, but more everyday items become taxable, increasing the number of items being taxed. Mr. Davis made no bones about disagreeing with the way 0 rating had been introduced by the former F&M administration, saying that in recent years, the country's tax policy has moved far away from the original plan and intent. It further went on, indeed, through the actions of the previous administration, the VAT base has been eroded by the implementation of many classes and types of items being 0 rated. These changes were considered by experts to be ill-advised and poorly executed, who believe 0 rating schemes are an ineffective and inefficient way to provide relief to the vulnerable in society. The editorial continued, "That's easy to say now, but it might be harder to convince those who see their loaf of bread go up in price by 10%. The F&M, of course, have a different viewpoint, with former Minister of State for Finance, Kwesi Thompson, warning that the Davis administration will be hurting the most vulnerable people in society by introducing VAT on breadbasket items. He also slammed the government for not having revealed this part of its tax plan earlier, saying they were delivering half-truths. He said, "What they have said is they will decrease VAT, but what they have not said is that for all of those items that were previously 0 rated, VAT-free that is, it will actually increase by 10%, and so the cost of food will go up, and the cost of all other items that were previously VAT-free will go up by 10%. It further said, that was nowhere near included in any statement previously or today. What are all those items that were previously 0 rated that will now be 10%? How will that affect the lives of Bahamians? That they will actually be paying more for certain things. We call upon the government to come clean, tell the whole story. So, Madam Speaker, to help finance their promise, they are adding VAT to breadbasket items and medicine. I think this is heartless and disgraceful. The pandemic is still ravaging our economy. There are many poor and low-income people who are trying to reestablish themselves in these difficult times. There are many people still struggling to feed their families. Despite this, the PLP ended the food distribution program done by the National Food Committee. I know you want to rise. I'll explain that. I know you want to rise. The breadbasket items are foods low-income families rely on. I'll explain at the end so as not to utilize my time. Adding a 10% tax.
The chair recognizes the Honorable
Inspector Kalani. Inspector Kalani to be announcing a program that was implemented by his administration that set a date for the ending, for the date that it would end would be October 4th. That was your decision. That was not my decision. That was your decision. After you spent $55 million, that was your decision, not my decision. So please, don't say after the PLP administration ended it. You set a date. In fact, you extended it several times, and then you had a final date, which was October 4th.
Madam Speaker, on 2 previous occasions, we had set a date, and we had extended because we thought it was necessary. We set a date, and already we had been making arrangement that in the event it needs extension, it would be extended. You stopped it, not us. You did not extend it. Adding a 10% tax to these foods will have a devastating impact on poor. Adding a 10% tax on medicines that are now exempt will have a devastating impact on the poor who needs these drugs. It will have a devastating impact on many who require prescription drugs and medicine. This inconsiderate policy comes at a time when there are inflation pressures throughout the world. And Madam Speaker, I've had great at-length discussions with major food chains, and they have estimated that the cost of living for food will increase by 15% between now and December. And then between January and March, there will be an additional 20% increase on foods. Prices of goods are going higher. And now this government will add even more cost on breakfast items and medicine. The VAT policy is an attack on the poor. It is a terrible lack of compassion and empathy. We in the opposition stand fully against adding VAT on bread basket items and exempted medicines. It is shameful that the new administration would start its time in office by harming the poor. Angleston, Centerville, Baintown, Freetown. Freetown is very argumentative. I am certain that he would not agree to increasing VAT on his area. The government's VAT policy means that VAT on caviar and champagne is going down from 12% to 10%.
The chair recognizes the honourable member.
It is most unparliamentary to refer to an honourable member of this House as being argumentative. I know the honourable member for Kalani will withdraw that.
I will withdraw. He loves a good debate. He loves a good debate. The government...
Might be an appropriate time for us to take the break. At the 1 o'clock hour now. You want to continue?
Yes, please.
Okay, we will move for an extension of the time beyond 1 o'clock, Madam Speaker.
Is there a seconder?
Second.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded that the business of this House will continue beyond 1 p.m. All those in favor shall remain seated. Those opposed will rise. The motion is carried. You'll continue.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. The government's VAT policy means that VAT on caviar and champagne will decrease from 12% to 10%. But the VAT on rice and tuna and grits and breakfast items are going up from zero, going from VAT-free to 10%. This will have devastating effect, Madam Speaker, on the inner city. Madam Speaker, many homes in the inner city do not have refrigerator. I've done my search with the mom and papa stores within the inner cities. They've informed me that the average individual may spend about $20 per day and they shop daily because they do not have refrigerators, sometimes electricity, etc. $20 per day. And this would continue for at least 6 days because they have a storage facility, which means that they will now spend an additional $48 to $50 per month.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Freetown.
Which bread basket items are refrigerated?
Milk. 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 They also point out, Madam Speaker, that Madam Speaker, that 60 to 70%, 60 to 70% of the purchase within the inner city mom and papa stores are bread basket items. This will have great impact, Madam Speaker, on the mom and papa stores because now the costs have gone up and they will experience great strain in terms of economy. This will also have impact on what we used to know as the dollar breakfast, which is now $3.99. The grits have gone up, but caviar gone down. My corned beef has gone up. Champagne, what I don't drink, gone down. Tuna has gone up. And other rich items have gone down. So, Madam Speaker, now the dollar or $3.99 breakfast that the average individual buy and that I used to love to buy for my grandson who loves his tuna and grits. Well, yes, I eat it. My favorite meal is corned beef and grits. The whole Bahamas know that. Corned beef and white rice. They know that. But Madam Speaker, it means that the poor is being impacted because now that so-called dollar or $3.99 breakfast will now reach more than $5, which will have great impact on the poor. What do you have against the poor? Just the member asked about some items that need refrigerating. Fresh milk. Baby foods, margarine, and there's a lot others. If you need me, I'll send it to you. The family islands, Madam Speaker, are also impacted. I've done my survey in the family islands, and I've been informed that in the family islands, 40 to 60% of the purchase are bread basket items. And again, they too purchase daily. And you want to know why? Because most of the purchases are done by individuals who are employed in the hospitality industry. And they cannot purchase food until they obtain their tips. And as they obtain their tips, they then buy their rice, they buy their tuna, they buy their grits, etc. And this is a daily purchase. But now their expenditure, thanks to you, will go up by an additional $50 per month while the expenditure for caviar goes down. I don't eat caviar. I don't eat it. I don't drink champagne. Madam Speaker, during the pandemic, we did all we could to help the poor and those who were on hard times. At the height of the pandemic, we were providing food to more than 100,000 people. Can the Minister of Social Services please let the House know how many Bahamians are now being fed through his Ministry of Week and the cost? I don't want to know now. We regularly provided tens of millions of dollars in unemployment assistance. The governing side should remember that only a small percentage of eligible voters supported them, the bad policies of this government will ensure that it has a short honeymoon with the Bahamian people. Madam Speaker, there's a high prevalence of non-communicable diseases in the country, with many Bahamians requiring medication. The Henry Kaiser Foreman Foundation, United States, noted in August 2019 that prescription drug use increases with age. If their findings approximately mirror what we find in the Bahamas, there is deep concern that there will now be VAT on various medication. The foundation found 75% of those 50 to 64 use prescription drugs, compared to 91% of those aged 80 and older. 51% of 30 to 49 years old, 38% of 18 to 29 years old. And the average number of prescriptions filled per year also increases with age. More than half of adults 65 and older, 54%, report taking 4 or more prescription drugs, compared to 1/3 of adults 50 to 60 years old, that is 32%, and about one in 10 adults 39 to 49, 13%, or 18 to 29, 7%. In the Bahamas, 1 in 6 have hypertension. For diabetes, it is 1 in 3 over 65. And for hypercholesterolemia, it is 1 in 2. Older Bahamians and Bahamians with lower incomes are going to be hit with a big rise in the cost of medication and prescription drugs. And not all drugs are provided by the National Drug Plan, which was implemented and put in place by the FNM government. Only 1/3 of the country, only 1/3 of the country has private insurance. They will be hit by higher VAT for medications, plus potentially rising premiums. Do you know that your bill, the government's bill for medications, will likewise go up as the government sources medication from the private sector, Lowe's, etc. Now there'll be a VAT charge, and the government in many instances is the major purchaser. The government's bills will subsequently go up. The vast majority of Bahamians are going to be hit with higher health costs. Madam Speaker, as I noted in my last budget communication as Minister of Finance, to significantly boost growth and to address structural issues in our economy, we must dramatically improve the process for Bahamian and international investors to invest in the Bahamas. Every country in the world, large and small, including the United States of America, China, and the United Kingdom, Barbados and New Zealand, require both domestic and foreign direct investment. Smaller developing countries like those in our region similarly require such investment. The Economic Recovery Committee reported the need, I quote, the need to develop and implement a new, robust, and internationally competitive investment environment is essential. If the Bahamas hopes to compete for foreign investment and to promote domestic investment, one of the goals of the ERC was to review and, when necessary, to revamp existing policies and procedures with a view to, among other things, increasing the Bahamas' economic growth. This included providing recommendations to improve the Bahamas' existing foreign national investment policy, the framework under which foreign direct investment projects are reviewed and approved, to attract quality foreign direct investment to the country, to improve the overall ease of which investors, both foreign and domestic, both make application to and commence businesses, activities in the Bahamas. The most important recommendation was the establishment of a newly created statutory organization, Invest Bahamas. Invest Bahamas will represent a retooling and rebranding of the of the government's current Bahamas Investment Authority, which is needed of extensive reform and revamping. A new agency will serve as the country's progressive, autonomous, and integrated foreign and domestic investment agency that will promote the Bahamas as a jurisdiction open for business for quality foreign direct investment. It will also facilitate foreign investment applications and assist Bahamians in accessing business capital and financial concessions. Invest Bahamas will be designed to operate with a code of confidentiality, transparency, and efficiency, and will provide a more modern, transparent, and faster experience of foreign and domestic investors. The PLP seemed to have taken this idea and rebranded it as Bahamas Invest. The Minister of Tourism also now has the responsibility for investment. If this is the case, why is the Bahamas Investment Authority still in the office of the Prime Minister? Will new legislation be brought to create a new investment agency? Where will it be situated? Will the Prime Minister's policy advisor, Mr. Fitzgerald, be intimately involved in negotiating investment deals? If the member for Exuma and Ragged Island has the investment portfolio, he should make sure that there is no undue interference in his ministry. Madam Speaker, we need more details from the government on many fronts, including on VAT, on vaccines, on investments, on capital works, on public health infrastructure, on the cost of their traveling and touring. They must now They must now take promises and talk and place into action. We will wait to see what they propose. We will remain vigilant on behalf of the Bahamian people. But Madam Speaker, the Minister of Finance said in the supplementary budget, I quote, "The financing provided by the $100 million World Bank Hospital loan to expand our hospitals in Grand Bahama and New Providence was poorly planned and managed by our predecessors." Further on, stated, as a result, the interest and fees associated with this loan were placed on the backs of the Bahamian public, even though no architectural drawings had been completed, final costing had not been completed, and no contract had been signed. He further went on to say, this is like borrowing for a mortgage, getting all of the money from the bank and putting it under a mattress while you dream about the type of house you want to build. End quote. Unfortunately, Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister and Minister of Finance had gotten the matter terribly wrong and is not offering the full picture. I wish to lay the facts and the proper information in the House. The new facility at Princess Margaret Hospital was to be a new 4-story tower and the establishment of an infectious disease unit. And the minister would rightly know that that is extremely important, especially in a COVID pandemic situation. The funds would also support the expansion of telemedicine, which we started in 2009, but was dismantled by the PLP government, and now the world speaks about telemedicine as that is the future. The funds, we are all getting old, you, I, and the machines. So that's no excuse. That's no excuse. The funds would also support the expansion of telemedicine and radiology so that individuals here in New Providence or in Acklands, Meguana can have their radiological investigation done without them having to travel here. But you dismantled it. And we want to bring it back. Not you personally. Sit. No, member, not you personally. You have time to speak.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Tall Pines.
Madam Speaker, I didn't want to interrupt the former Prime Minister, but I think he's going down a slippery slope. No. As it relates to the loan. We're quite.
Let me finish.
No, let me finish. No, let me finish. Let me finish because.
It's essential for me, because to stop the loan. It is essential for me to complete before the member introduces his argument.
No,
I don't know what I'm going to say yet.
No, but you've already
I will not
spoken.
yield until I'm completed.
You asked me or you instructed me?
No, I must be completed with the loan.
You don't have to complete nothing. I pride on the point of order.
You had stopped.
Sit down, man. I rise on the point of order.
You telling who sit down?
Because
come here.
Members, honorable members. Honorable members. Honorable members.
Come here.
Honorable member. Honorable member for Kalani.
She asked me to sit.
Now, the member rose on a point of order, and the only person who decides whether the point of order won't be recognized would be me. And so I am giving you, honorable member for Tall Pines, the opportunity.
Thank you so much.
And when you are through,
Yes.
I will allow the member of Kalani to complete.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. The former Prime Minister made reference to the loan that he indicated that we stopped. I want to make some points very clear. On coming to office, we were aware of this loan and the fact that the money was sitting at the central bank and the Bahamian people were paying interest. That was a red flag for us because no one borrows money and allow money to sit and accumulate interest without the structural plans completed so that the money could be put to good use. Any responsible government will have to look at that and look at it from a magnifying glass. Secondly, as far as the second portion of the loan negotiated for the Rand Memorial Hospital, that was never complete when we came to office. We are doing the due diligence on behalf of the Bahamian people. Yes. That is our job. And that's what we would do, and that's what we elected to do. We will do it because it's the right thing to do. And lastly, the tower that the members speak about, as far as we know, that the deal itself, without the architectural drawings being completed, is carved in stone. On coming to office, we made it clear in the speech from the throne that was clearly articulated in our blueprint for change that this administration will construct a hospital in New Providence, a hospital in Grand Bahama by way of private-public partnerships. Let me finish, Prime Minister. With due respect, let me finish, because I will give you that respect when I'm done. What we have done is we have called in the architects to see exactly where they are. There is no renderings of any drawings that are complete. The drawings are in the infancy stages, and we are definitely looking at whether or not the project is viable for the Bahamian people to sit on close to $100 million for the next year or two paying interest. That is our position.
Honorable members, I'm asking that the exchanges that just Oh Lord, just happened. Be stricken from the record for both of you on parliamentary misbehavior. The one where we talk about sit down and the other one about come here. You didn't hear that?
I asked you which one, Madam Speaker. I asked you which one. Because I was
Both.
aware. Okay.
Both.
That's fine.
Both.
That's fine.
Okay? I thought it was very unparliamentary on both behalf. Okay? And it's not good. It's not good for the public to see us carry on. Bad conduct. Bad conduct. Okay? So I'm asking for that to be stricken from the record. And we won't have any further outbursts like that. Okay? Very ambiguous.
Looking in one direction, though.
You're the leader. You're the new leader, you know? I'm looking at, you know, the leader takes the hit for everybody, you know?
Except those.
No. I'm looking at two. I looked in both directions, you know? I looked in both directions. So, you know, but the leader isn't here. So I'm looking at the one that's here, okay? So, I'm looking at the new leader to whisper to the old leader to behave. And I'm asking the member for Tall Pines to behave on the leader not being here. Okay? Is that okay? I don't mean anything. Okay? All right. Member for Kalani, let's continue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm happy that you allowed the member to interject and give his input, because the entire Bahamas would have heard what he said, and now they will hear the facts. The funds will be utilized to complete the improvement of the accident emergency, which would improve the flow and the capacity by an additional 30%, as well as renovation of the wards. On July 21st this year, the PHA signed contracts with the Beck Group. As I noted, one of the features was to design and provide construction for a 4-story tower at the Princess Margaret Hospital. The tower will house the maternal and child services, medical and surgical clinical areas. And the tower will be located immediately east of the existing critical care block, of which we built, but I never had the opportunity to cut the ribbon. You did it. In Grand Bahama, a new multi-story tower for inpatient care and ancillary service at the Ryan Hospital was also being planned. And yes, the discussion was still in French and only waiting for approval. And this discussion for the Ryan Memorial Hospital involves $36 million via the World Bank, utilizing the same system. Allow me to finish. So with this being stopped, means that the new 4-story complex is presumably on hold. The contracts represented the first stage of approximately $90 million for investment made by the previous administration to expand and upgrade the health infrastructure of the Princess Margaret Hospital in New Providence and Sandlands. The funds, now this is the important part. This is the important part. I want you to listen because the Bahamas heard you, and I'm glad they heard you. The funds we were borrowing had a very, yes, let me finish. The funds had a very low interest rate. The interest rate, and I quote, that's why I'm happy you spoke. The interest rate was 1.897% from the World Bank Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency. I repeat, 1.897, and I can give the other 2 digits if you want. You know, it's all here. but I can't give him my password open for me. But one they are very confidential. They are very confidential information. Not even the leader can see. Not even the leader. They are for my eyes only. The funds. An interest rate of 1.897% from the World Bank Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency. Because the funds were being borrowed from the World Bank, there would be great transparency, accountability, and oversight. We were getting one of the lowest interest rates available in the world. It was not $100 million as the Prime Minister or Minister of Finance stated. The exact amount was $115,247,319.20. The 100 million was better than entering into any PPP. This money was better than entering any PPP, which could have resulted in a much higher interest rate, 8, 9, 12%. And the member had stated in this parliament that they had stopped it and they were going to negotiate PPP. Now, when that is negotiated, Madam Speaker, whenever the PPP is negotiated, I would like the member to inform this House who would have been the benefactor of the PPP versus the the 1.897% interest.
The chair recognizes.
Thank you so much. A point of order, Madam President. The member for Kalani is once again misleading this honorable House and the Bahamian people. No, I didn't say we stop anything. You said that. I said we're reviewing it because people borrow money when they have projects to complete. You have no project except for preliminary drawings.
Once I finish, don't embarrass yourself.
No, I'm not embarrassing myself. I just want to clarify what you said. You said we on this side stopped it. I said to you, we are reviewing it because we need to know exactly what are the conditions of the loan and whether or not you had any architectural renderings to build what you talked about. They are at the infancy stage. This is. I believe this was an election ploy. Huh? We're investigating, sir. We can union what? Because we brought the architects in to show us what they've done. Yes. We will determine whether we have the leverage or whether or not we need to find out what the deal is. We don't know the deal. We try to find out about the deal.
Madam Speaker.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Kalani.
The entire Bahamas heard the member stating that we are paying on the monies, etc. I want to ask the member to review the facts. The facts would reveal that it's a 7-year loan, and the monies, there's a 1-year moratorium. In other words, there's a 1-year no payment issued, no repayment plan. 1 year. And you mean you come in, you don't know the facts, and you spoke to the Bahamian people as if you knew? You're embarrassing yourself. You're embarrassing yourself. Let me finish. If you want to, I would forward all details to you afterward. Yes, us, yes.
Thank you so much.
So you could speak from a position of strength and not guesswork.
That's why it's on hold.
I am embarrassed for the competent authority. Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, it was a 7-year loan. There was a 1-year grace period, and no payment were to be commenced until they are drawn down. So what money we paying? Until it's drawn down. Now I will send the facts to you, so when you come back with your debate, you come with the facts. Do not embarrass yourself and your government in the in the eyes of the world.
The money is in the central bank.
Anyhow, I can WhatsApp it to you. Now, the $115 million, 247,319. You know what it was used for? 20 million of it was for the SBDC, for small business development, the young people, the Bahamian entrepreneurs who want to get in business. We have demonstrated that it works. Within the inner city, the SBDC has given the 49 individuals $122,419 to start their own business. This was given as grant from the same $20 million that we're trying to empower more people that you want to stop. Now, the 49 individuals who got the $122,419 was able to create 142 jobs, establishment of their businesses. They were able to generate revenue stream of $4.8 million. And you want to tell me we're getting these at 1.897 interest, and you want to go to PPP? If you want to go to PPP, Jesus Christ, come to me. I want to lend you some of my money. I withdraw that, Madam Speaker. I want to lend you some of my money. You give me 8% interest. Better than the bank. They all know what I got. They all know what I got.
I wish you well with that.
The $20 million, which was a part of this package, was also used for preschools. Do you know that $1 million was put aside? And 36 preschool owners was able to get grants of $25,000 each and advance their preschool and make it certified so that they can accommodate behemoth. That's what we're using the money for. Do you know that this $20 million, is being utilized so that when RCCL complete their project, monies can be utilized from here for Bahamians to develop and expand their businesses and become a part of the hospitality and tourist industry? Do you also know that that money would be utilized so that they can purchase ferry boats, certified and become a part of the business? But you don't want it. You hate the poor, eh? You hate us. Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker. When the member goes for the PPP, the Bahamian public knows that a loan was being granted to them at an interest rate of 1.897%. We would like to know when that loan is negotiated with the private partner, what is the interest rate? They want to know. That interest rate must be better than 1.897. It must be better. We want to know. We want to know. As for your new hospital, we had looked at that. We had traveled throughout the length and breadth of New Providence looking for the site of the new hospital. I can tell you, the records are there. But I can WhatsApp something to you too. I trust you. I'll give you my code. I trust you. Yeah. Only sometimes it go viral. Now, the new hospital, Madam Speaker, was estimated in 2009, 2010 to be $650 million. I did the work. I was Minister of Health. I did the work. All right? Just like I did telemedicine, I did the work. All right? Now, so the Bahamian people, the mothers and the kids out there would like to know
When would their maternal and child health structure commence? The monies have been obtained, approved at a 1.89% interest. Grand Bahama want to know, when will their 4-story complex commence? Because the $36 million was under the same principle and format as the $115 million. And
I just off the cuff now. There's one other thing I would ask you while I'm on my feet. The Hawksbill Creek Hospital. The Hawksbill Creek Clinic. Grand Bahama. Hawksbill, my apology. Hawksbill Clinic. I would ask that you follow up with Direct Relief. Direct Relief want to renovate that. They have already invested over $7 million in the Bahamas. And they want to renovate and complete and advance the Hawksbill Clinic to the state-of-the-art clinic. Don't delay it. It's free. It's free money. Thank you. Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I need one to close. I only want to close by first thanking my constituents, Kalani, for giving me this opportunity to represent them again. And they can be assured that I will be here for the entire duration of time, speaking on their behalf, defending the government's policy, and not being ashamed of what we've done. Because with respect to Paradise Island, if I had the lease, again, to ensure that young Bahamians are employed, 200 at $30,000 to $40,000 a year job, I will do it. To ensure that young Bahamians own the ferry boats to carry passengers to Paradise Island, I will do it.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Fort Charlotte.
Madam Speaker, before the honourable member were to conclude, I just would wish to make a request that he lay on the table the document referred to quite extensively by Mala Dukaran, because
I quoted.
Yeah, you quoted. That's what I'm saying, and whether the member would adopt the entirety of the report, because it actually, contrary to what the member had represented with respect to foreign currency borrowing and the negative impact that would have on the Bahamian economy. But he still has to lay on the table so that members have the opportunity to put in context the portion. So I'm asking the honourable member to lay on the table. I'm also asking the honourable member, Madam Speaker, with your permission, to withdraw the imputation this honourable member made with respect to Mr. Fitzgerald and the Minister of Finance and his specific reference to undue influence. I thought that was most unfortunate. It was most unfortunate, and well, the question conveyed an imputation, and the rules are very clear. The rules are very clear. The rules, please, can I speak? The rules are very clear. And this is Rule 33, subsection 17, imputations of improper motives and personal reflections shall be dealt with by the chair under the rules relating to the order or House committee. But you specifically said undue influence, and I thought that was an unfortunate choice of words.
Yes.
It's never been my intent to impugn anybody. I asked a question, Madam Speaker. The two articles, VAT increase on bread basket items that I referred to earlier, and the article, the editorial by the Tribune, Davis cuts with one hand, increase with the other. I gladly table those. David.
For clarity, will we get the report that is asked by the member?
I would get the report for the member. The member can, I'll forward it to you. Madam Speaker, I thank you very much and do enjoy the rest of the day. And I'll be back at 3 o'clock, at which time you can commence. Thank you very much.
No, says. The honorable member withdraw the question as it was framed because of the imputation. But I'd like the rest of the Bahamas and the world. This week, I heard an improper imputation. And I'm saying that it should be withdrawn, or it should be.
2 minutes, 4 minutes. Order that the documents do lie on the table.
I'm speaking to the speaker. I'm addressing the speaker. You've had the opportunity to make your point of order, if that is what it was. My point of order is addressed to Madam Speaker.
And I am asking the same thing that I asked of the member for Seabreeze, to bring the documentation to verify what was said. Okay? Thank you.
Speaker, we have now reached the point for our lunch break, having listened to the revisionist, and certainly, Madam Speaker, very disappointing from time to time. We will certainly deal with most of what the former Prime Minister discussed in his contribution and put the facts where they must be.
Yes.
But the member must always remember that respect begets respect. And you must always lead by example. Madam Speaker, we take the break here. We'll be back at 3 o'clock, Madam Speaker. And I now move, and upon returning, the member for Bain and Grantstown will have the floor.
Thank you, honorable member. Is there a seconder?
Second.
The business of this House. It is moved and seconded that the business of this House move to 3 p.m. be suspended to 3 p.m. All those in favor shall remain seated. Those opposed will rise. The motion is carried.
All right.